A hooded man trudged through a dark alley while behind him a group of thugs on a stoop started taunting him. One of them even spat on the ground to provoke him, but it almost hit the guy next to him, causing them to start cursing each other out. Ignoring the world, the man kept walking without a single glance back. This was a neighborhood of dilapidated tenements. It was always noisy and filthy, and hidden deep within was Bong Joon-hyuk's tiny attic room, only about 17 square meters. At 25 years old, he was unemployed, and he was struggling to juggle 3 part-time jobs at once: a convenience store clerk, a barbecue restaurant server, and a daily manual laborer. Even though he worked himself to the bone, Bong Joon-hyuk could never save a single penny. The reason was simple debt. It was a debt he was forced to pay no matter how miserable his life became. He had no special skills, only a body for pure manual labor. His future seemed to hold not a single ray of light. Just as Bong Joon-hyuk was getting fed up with another instant noodle dinner, a system window suddenly appeared before him. It announced that he had awakened. Bong Joon-hyuk froze a noodle still dangling from his mouth. His eyes widened in shock, sweat pouring down his face. A scorching heat hit him as he dropped the bowl of noodles. The broth splashed everywhere, causing Bong Joon-hyuk to scream in surprise. He was completely bewildered. Awakening was considered a blessing, an opportunity like winning the lottery jackpot that could completely change your life. The problem was Bong Joon-hyuk could only enjoy it if he managed to stay alive. Entering a tower was extremely dangerous. He could be torn apart by monsters, freeze to death, or be burned alive in harsh climates, or even be poisoned, fall into traps, or be crushed. He had always been the type to turn a blind eye to injustice and avoid danger at all costs, to the point where he never dared to walk under active construction sites. Bong Joon-hyuk saw himself as a powerless nobody for the past 25 years. So when he heard he had awakened, he was so skeptical, he thought he was just dozing off from exhaustion. Only after checking and seeing the status window appear, did he start to believe it was real? He belonged to the Black Tower, was level 1, and his attribute was summoning. His attribute skills included fixed summon, random summon and dismiss, accompanied by the general skills enter tower once a day and tower inventory. Usually awakened people received attributes like swordsmanship, spearmanship, summoning, or healing. Summoning included controlling spirits, spirit beasts, androids, or demons. Bong Joon-hyuk was curious about what kind of summoner he would become. To try his luck, he tried to act cool and shouted the summon command, but nothing happened. Embarrassed, Bong Joon-hyuk tried random summon, but it was still dead silent. It was then that Bong Joon-hyuk remembered the golden rule: a player's abilities only work inside the tower and cannot manifest in the outside world. He felt like a complete idiot. He was certain the skill would never activate here. But to his surprise, the screen displayed a notification initiating random summon. To his astonishment, a glowing door appeared and a man stepped out. The man looked just as panicked, his eyes wide, sweat pouring down his face, and his jaw dropped, unable to understand what was happening. Even stranger, the summoned entity was a human. The red-haired man insisted he was fully human, then gave a military-style salute. Bong Joon-hyuk couldn't understand why he had successfully performed a summon outside the tower, and that the summoned being was a flesh-and-blood human, not a spirit beast or a golem. Immediately, the red-haired man sniffed out the scent of food. He looked excitedly at the noodles and asked for a bite. Bong Joon-hyuk barely had time to agree before the red-haired man happily slurped up the entire bowl of noodles. Bong Joon-hyuk stood rooted to the spot, staring blankly at the scene before him. Instead of summoning a powerful god of war to help him survive, Bong Joon-hyuk had brought home a shameless freeloader who was now slurping away and sweating bullets because of the spiciness. Joon-hyuk silently judged the red-haired man to be a total wimp for thinking a bland bowl of udon was spicy. But putting that aside, Bong Joon-hyuk was still in shock. A skill had successfully activated outside the tower. Furthermore, the summoned entity was a human. This was something he had never heard of in any document about the awakened. Bong Joon-hyuk hurriedly opened his status window and discovered he had the ability to summon humans or demi-humans of various rarity levels, increasing from RSAR SSR up to the legendary LSSR grade. In addition, the system allowed him and his summoned entity to communicate fluently in any situation. This feeling made Bong Joon-hyuk feel like he was pulling for character cards in a video game. Next, the system informed Bong Joon-hyuk that he was bound by 3 absolute laws for summoned entities. The first law was to protect the master's life, above all else. The second law was to obey the master's commands absolutely. And the third law, if there was a conflict between Law 1 and Law 2, Law 1 would always take precedence. Bong Joon-hyuk was extremely pleased with this absolute obedience clause. He began to grow curious about the identity of the person he had just summoned. Detailed information immediately appeared on the screen. The man was John Casack, a mad assassin from the Crowan Assassins Guild. He was an SR rank, with an appearance time of 6 hours and a 3-hour cooldown after being dismissed. In his profile, John Casack was described as the guild's biggest headache, due to his insane nature, but he possessed a 99% assassination success rate and had even taken down a 5th Circle Black Mage. Random information began to flood his mind, giving Bong Joon-hyuk a headache. In a daze, Bong Joon-hyuk found himself falling into an endless void and witnessed John Casack's past with his own eyes. He saw the assassin skillfully behead his targets, but what made him truly peculiar was that he would tie red ribbons on the severed heads as if they were gifts. His madness ended after his one defeat, when he infiltrated the room of the Empire's strongest swordsman. Before he could make a move, John's body was instantly sliced in two, and that was his last memory. Back in reality, John suddenly approached from behind and asked what he was thinking, startling Joon-hyuk. Bong Joon-hyuk stumbled back awkwardly, his limbs flailing before he fell onto the floor. John explained that he didn't mean to scare him and just wanted to ask if his master had any orders. Joon-hyuk tried to calm down, telling himself that the man had to obey him absolutely. He took a deep breath and ordered John to clean the pot and wipe the table. John worked quickly and precisely without a single complaint, to test if he would really follow even unreasonable requests. Joon-hyuk gave an extremely bizarre command. He ordered John to bark like a dog. When he saw John stop wiping the table, Bong Joon-hyuk worried that he had just wounded an assassin's pride. Despite his legendary past, I thought he would go crazy, but contrary to my worries, John was happily barking away to please his master. Joon-hyuk was speechless at this level of obedience and could only give him a thumbs up in approval. Just then, a loud banging on the door shattered the atmosphere. The people outside shouted, demanding he open the door immediately. Joon-hyuk suddenly remembered that today was the day he had to pay the interest. In the past, his father had fallen and broken his hip, needing money for surgery, and on top of that was his younger brother's university tuition. So he had blindly taken out a 10 million won loan from some loan sharks. Even though he had worked his butt off and paid over 5 million won in interest, the principal was still untouched. Hearing the strange noise, John Casack immediately drew his knife, his eyes cold and sharp, ready to chop off the head of whoever was outside if his master gave the order. Joon-hyuk looked at John in a panic. Bong Joon-hyuk knew for sure that if he let this crazy assassin take action, a horrific disaster would truly unfold. He ordered John to hide in the bathroom and not to move a single hair, and he absolutely had to keep his mouth shut. John even foolishly asked if he was allowed to breathe. Only when Bong Joon-hyuk nodded in agreement did the man walk into the bathroom relieved. The moment he cracked the door open, a huge hand gripped the back of his neck. A man with a thuggish face checked to see if he was healthy. Then he said mockingly that he'd been worried sick, afraid Bong Joon-hyuk had fallen ill when he didn't see the interest payment come through. Bong Joon-hyuk didn't dare move and could only mumble an apology. He explained that he had simply forgotten and said he had just completed the bank transfer. The head goon pretended to be kind, saying that if he was too broke, he shouldn't push himself too hard. He could just go sell a kidney, because life would be a breeze with only one kidney left. Another henchman standing by added that this kid had a younger brother, and the boss immediately agreed, saying kids always fetch a better price. Hearing that, Bong Joon-hyuk's face hardened with anger. The head goon noticed the change in his attitude and challenged him, asking if he dared to lay a hand on him. Bong Joon-hyuk quickly forced a strained smile, saying he would never dare do such a thing. The man warned him to know his place. If he didn't want to die a miserable death with no one knowing, then slammed the door and left. He let out a sigh of relief as the storm passed. Only then did John step out of the bathroom. He was proud of having hidden himself perfectly, just as ordered. Suddenly, Bong Joon-hyuk felt exhausted after such an overwhelming day. From working overtime to awakening his powers to summoning an assassin and then a visit from the debt-collecting gangsters, it all made him briefly consider climbing the tower. But how could a coward like him possibly survive in a place like that? John asked him what he needed to do next. Bong Joon-hyuk replied that he could do whatever he wanted. If he wanted to disappear, then he would dismiss the summons. John expressed a desire to watch TV. He didn't understand how an ancient assassin knew about TV and instant noodles, but Bong Joon-hyuk still let him watch a few episodes of a drama series. Watching John intently focused on the TV, he went to bed and suddenly realized that feeling someone else's presence in the house wasn't so bad after all. It brought him a bit of comfort after days of working himself to death. The next morning, the alarm clock rang at 8 o'clock. Bong Joon-hyuk woke up and saw that John was gone. He thought the summons had expired as he had a vague memory of seeing the system window while he was sleeping. Bong Joo-hyuk turned on the TV to watch the news while brushing his teeth, getting ready for work. The news suddenly reported a horrific massacre at the office of SMY Card Financial, which was actually a den for loan sharks. His limbs went weak, and he dropped his toothbrush when he heard that 3 victims had been beheaded, and even more horrifyingly, the heads were found, tied with red ribbons like packaged gifts. Bong Joo-hyuk immediately thought of John Cusack. Bong Joo-hyuk's face turned pale as he realized he had just summoned a twisted homicidal assassin who killed without batting an eye. The SMY Card massacre became a shocking piece of news. The heads displayed like gifts in pools of blood made him restless, terrified he would be implicated. The obsession followed him even to his part-time job. Bong Joo-hyuk saw the head of the loan shark on the checkout counter ready to be paid for, then saw headless bodies carrying gift boxes, red-ribboned boxes displayed on the bookshelf. Bong Joo-hyuk stumbled back in a panic, bumping into the shelf behind him, but it all turned out to be a hallucination. A customer worriedly asked if he was okay. Bong Joo-hyuk hastily apologized and continued his work. After his shift, Bong Joo-hyuk realized he couldn't go on like this, and decided to call out of all his jobs the next day. Bong Joo-hyuk sighed, wondering if people were dying because of him. He opened John Cusack's information panel, a super rare grade insane assassin with a 6-hour appearance limit. Bong Joo-hyuk knew he wouldn't harm his master, but this madness still terrified him. Suddenly, the system prompted him to leave a satisfaction rating for John. Bong Joo-hyuk remembered telling him to watch TV, but he had gone off and killed people on his own. So he decided to give him exactly 1 star, for being insolent and disobedient. He meant to express his frustration by giving him the middle finger. That's what he really wanted to give him. But being kind-hearted by nature, Bong Joo-hyuk told himself he shouldn't be so cold. So in the end, he only gave him 3 stars. Because his mother worked as a dispatcher for a water purifier rental company, Bong Joo-hyuk knew all too well how hurtful a low satisfaction rating could be. Immediately after John was summoned, he greeted him with a radiant smile and didn't forget to thank him for the 3 stars. He even promised to work harder. Looking at John's innocent face, Bong Joo-hyuk doubted whether he was really the one who had killed those people. He asked him straight up if he was the one who had murdered the loan sharks yesterday. John proudly admitted that he had cleaned them up last night. Bong Joo-hyuk held his breath upon hearing his confirmation. His heart filled with fear, knowing that the man standing before him was a real murderer. His heart pounded wildly and his stomach churned, but he tried to calm himself, certain that John wouldn't harm him. Bong Joo-hyuk wondered how he had found their office. John revealed that he had secretly marked them for tracking when they stormed into his house. He reasoned that they were a threat, so it was best to deal with them before they could make a move. The man argued that he never gave such an order, but John explained, based on the 3rd of the 3 supreme laws. If laws 1 and 2, conflict law 1 takes precedence. In other words, despite having to obey absolutely if the master is in a dangerous situation, he has the right to ignore a command to protect his master's life. Bong Joo-hyuk retorted, "What if he ordered him to kill himself?" John replied that in that case he would not obey. He argued that John had made an excessively rash judgment on his own, but John asserted that those bastards were risk factors who would certainly threaten his life one day. Therefore, it was an incredibly logical decision. He cursed John, calling him a psycho, but then quickly apologized. John paid it no mind, as he was all too used to hearing those words. He worried that this behavior was extremely dangerous. For instance, if he was walking down the street and accidentally bumped into a thug and that thug just cursed and made a few empty threats, with no real intention of acting on them, but by John's interpretation, that guy would end up with a red bow tied on his head. He was caught in a dilemma. John admitted his mistake and surprisingly knelt down. He explained that harming people wasn't the way to protect him. On the contrary, it would only put him in a more difficult situation. John reasoned that no one would ever know, but he still made him promise to only act when a knife was at his throat, not to act based on speculation. John enthusiastically promised to judge the situation better. Before disappearing, John asked a question that made him pause. "Aren't you going to climb the tower?" He was conflicted, knowing this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but he was too afraid of dying. He asked what kind of people had summoned John before. He replied that it was a truly strong and brave person. The man felt ashamed that someone else used this power to save the world while he didn't even have the guts to risk his own life. He mocked himself as the pathetic coward, but John told him he was the best summoner. He asserted that the greatest virtue of a summoner is safety first. Courage can sometimes be a poison because if the summoner dies, entities like him have nowhere to go. John encouraged him to live a safe and long life, and to leave all the dirty work to him. That night, he tossed and turned, thinking about whether or not to climb the tower. He told himself it wasn't for him. He just wanted to live peacefully once his debts, along with the debt collectors, were gone. He planned to work hard and believed things would get better. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his father. He asked if he was keeping up with his physical therapy. He received the bad news that the whole family had to move to a bigger hospital because of his father's condition while his mother had just lost her job. His father told him not to worry too much. He was only calling because he hadn't heard from him in a while. He also promised to make time to visit next time, and the two of them would go out to eat, not forgetting to tell him not to overwork himself. The call ended. Immediately, he put on a full set of protective gear. He told himself he would just go to the first floor, take a quick look, and leave right away. If it looked dangerous, he'd retreat instantly. The timing was pretty good since he had already quit all his part-time jobs. He intended to try summoning another entity, hoping for a lucky roll to get a legendary rank. SSR instead of the Crazy John. However, the system announced that the random summon skill was on cooldown, and he had to wait another 28 days, 11 hours, 8 minutes, and 37 seconds. He didn't expect the waiting time to be as long as a whole month. With no other choice, he had to call John out, feeling guilty for having just considered replacing him. It made him unable to look John straight in the eye. He informed John that they would be entering the tower. John's first reaction was to praise his courage, but he immediately took it back. He told him not to be brave. The man reassured him that he was just going in for a taste and would come right out. John told him to throw away that clunky protective gear. He would become his most effective tool and hunter. He promised to take care of everything inside the tower so that he wouldn't have to lift a single finger. The system asked if he wanted to enter Black Tower, Korea. The currently accessible floor was the first floor. As soon as he confirmed, he felt like he was in free fall. He screamed his lungs out while John clung tightly to his shirt. The space suddenly changed. He was pulled into a vibrant digital space with streams of light and numbers flashing by at dizzying speed. His face turned pale. His eyes were squeezed shut in panic, until they both landed safely. The first floor appeared as a desolate, dusty wasteland. He felt nauseous and began to vomit violently, right on the spot. John kindly asked if he was okay and told him he'd get used to it soon. Then John led the way, taking him out of the safe zone. The system began to upgrade his physical abilities according to his level. His stats and combat skills were now available. Only now did he truly feel what it was like to be a player. Even though he was only level 1, he felt his body was much stronger. The mission for the first floor was to kill 5 tough-skinned fat grubs within 2 hours. These monsters were basically considered punching bags for newbies to test their skills. Their attack power was almost 0, but their skin was very tough. Extremely hard to kill. Other players usually took at least 30 minutes to take down one. He resolved to capture one with his own hands. John asked if it was necessary for him to suffer like that. As he approached a monster, he suddenly realized he needed a weapon. He was about to turn and borrow one from John when the fat grub loomed right in front of him. His face went white, and he immediately cried out for John's help. John affirmed that it was a wise decision. He shot forward like a blur. With a single blow, he blew the monster's head to pieces. Then he continued to rush towards the remaining ones, telling him to just stay back with daggers in his hands. John looked extremely excited. He threw his knives at multiple targets simultaneously, then activated his blade detonation skill, causing all the stabbed monsters to explode into pieces. He was utterly astonished to see the monsters annihilated in the blink of an eye. Mission complete. He received a reward of 100 mana stones and an S-rank clear rating for the first floor of Black Tower, Korea. The system also awarded him a platinum badge. He was lost in happiness. Realizing how incredibly easy it all was, he dreamed of a rich future not far away. However, he had no idea that at that very moment, the notification screens of all players across Korea from gyms to nightclubs simultaneously lit up with the news of his achievement. He was transported out of the tower, right after completing the mission. The sensation of teleportation still made him feel sick. Checking the time, he saw that the entire process had taken a mere 5 minutes model. John praised him for doing a great job, but he replied that he didn't do anything but stand still. John confirmed that was exactly the right thing for him to do. He'd heard rumors that other players usually had to fight the worms to the point of exhaustion to complete the mission, but for him it was all incredibly simple. He fiddled with the magic stone he had just received. This was the first time he had seen a real one. Magic stones are a crucial resource in modern industry, even though the price has dropped significantly compared to the early days. The tower appeared, but 100 grams could still be exchanged for about 50,000 gold. It has been 25 years since the Black Towers sprouted up all over the world, so ordinary people all knew these basic facts. but he had never heard anyone mention a platinum badge. However, that wasn't as important as the fact that he had just earned 50,000 won in just 3 short minutes. John then went back to the TV to watch a drama series. He generously ordered food delivery and invited the guy to eat with him. As soon as he smelled it, John excitedly asked if it was spicy pork hocks. He replied that he had ordered the regular pork hocks since the guy couldn't handle spicy food, but the guy insisted he smelled something very pungent. It was then that he realized the guy's tolerance for spice. This assassin's was truly zero. John ate cheerfully and didn't forget to thank his master for the gracious meal. He was curious about the guy's way of speaking, like using the military sentence endings samda or imda. John explained that it was because he had been with his previous summoner for too long. He thought to himself that this must be the kind of influence you get from an ex, which in this case was a former master. He told John to keep speaking that way because it sounded quite fun. By now he was completely convinced that the tower was nothing to be afraid of, and was in fact extremely easy. The next morning he set up a true man's work schedule for himself, working at the convenience store during the day, serving at the charcoal grill at night, and the manual labor in between. He decided to quit that part entirely. Instead, he would go home and clear the tower with John. That day he summoned John again, who had just received another 5-star rating from him. He admitted that if the system allowed a 10-point rating, he wouldn't have hesitated. John was overjoyed, and revealed that the higher the rating, the more benefits the summoned entity receives, such as extending their appearance time, increasing their rank, and raising the chance of being summoned again. The two of them entered the 2nd floor of the Black Tower. This time, the mission was to defeat 10 clever fat worms. The worms on this floor were more cunning than he expected, moving all over the place with incredible speed. As he was wondering what to ask John to do, the guy announced that everything would be taken care of. In 3 minutes, so they could get home in time. He even enticed John by saying they would go eat fried chicken and drink beer after they finished. Hearing that, John perked right up. He rushed in and dealt with the clever worms in the blink of an eye. He leveled up instantly, receiving 200 grams of magic stone, and another S-rank clear rating plus a 2nd platinum badge. Everything was going so smoothly that he could squeeze in a tower run right before his morning shift on the following days. He conquered the 3rd floor with its icy fat worms, and then the 4th and 5th floors. John fought so effectively that his own landing skill improved significantly. With 5 consecutive S-ranks and a collection of 5 platinum badges, he received a very special privilege, Awakening Trait Enhancement. Thanks to this, the number of entities he could summon at the same time increased to 2. His current status board showed that he had reached level 6. Although his combat skills board was still empty, being able to summon, one more person made him feel incredibly secure. If John alone could sweep through everything, having another partner would guarantee his absolute safety in longer, drawn-out battles. He later realized that the S-rank reward was a real treasure that could completely change his life. Having another partner meant that if he ever got into battles of attrition in the future, he would be doubly protected. He now had 20 days before he could activate the random summon skill again. Juhyok decided he would wait patiently until then. At that time, the 3 of them could charge into battle together. While he enjoyed the feeling of getting a free carry, his 2 summoned entities would continue to clear the tower floors. According to the plan, tomorrow would be the conquest of the 6th floor. Meanwhile, in Seoul, inside the Korean Awakened Management Bureau, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. 2 men sat on a sofa with expectant looks, as if they were waiting for something momentous to appear in the morning, afternoon, or perhaps late at night. Limina, the deputy director of the Management Bureau, dressed in a chic business suit, approached and asked if they were waiting for a new announcement. Zhangguanjin, a team leader here. Startled, he blushed and told her not to read people's minds like that. When asked about the latest announcement, Mina confirmed that the 6th floor of Black Tower, Korea had just been cleared with an S+ rank. Lately, the Black Tower's global notification system had been going off constantly, and each time it was news of another S+ rank clear. Guangjin asserted that this was definitely the work of a single person, because floors 1 through 5 were all cleared in perfect order. He believed this was without a doubt the work of a master with unprecedented natural talent. As he was busy speculating about what would happen if every floor was cleared with an S rank, the sound of a fist slamming on a table cut through his thoughts. It was Park Go-Ansu, the director of the Awakened Management Bureau. He growled, reminding them that the highest rank in Korea before this was only A rank. They didn't even know that higher ranks existed or that an S rank clear could trigger a worldwide announcement. In the current international society, it's very common for countries to lure away immigrant players. There are even secret kidnappings happening behind the scenes. Therefore, before another country snatched this player, they had to find them immediately. The director ordered that all newly registered players be placed under strict surveillance. 2 days later, Ju-hyuk's target was the 8th floor. He felt extremely satisfied clearing one floor each day without any trouble. Up to the 10th floor, it was basically the beginner's zone, so everything went very smoothly. The setting for this floor was a swampy area, and their mission was to defeat 10 red-spiked frog warriors. As soon as the frog warriors attacked, John drew his dagger and swiftly unleashed a series of consecutive slashes. The system immediately announced that he had completed the mission for the 8th floor. The reward this time is 800 grams of magic stones and 5 recovery potions exclusive to the tower. Once again, the S rank and the platinum badge belonged to him. John spoke up praising him. "You've worked hard." Even though in reality, he didn't have to lift a finger each day, John insisted that mustering the courage to step into the tower was the hardest part. And it was thanks to him that the team was able to climb the tower so easily. However, John also didn't forget to remind him not to let his guard down, because after the 10th floor, things wouldn't be this easy anymore. Another floor cleared in just 3 minutes. Ju-hyuk started thinking about giving the assassin a gift. He generously took out some pocket money and gave it to John, telling him to go out, have some fun, and eat whatever he liked, since his presence time was still plentiful. However, he didn't forget to warn him not to cause any trouble whatsoever. Contrary to his expectations, John refused, which greatly surprised him. John explained that he could not leave his master's side for even a second, so he'd rather stay home and watch TV. It was only then that Ju-hyuk realized the rule of absolute obedience also applied to matters like this. He had to suggest ordering fried chicken to the house instead, and that immediately got John excited. The guy called to order a delicious set himself and, of course, not spicy. While waiting for the food, Ju-hyuk decided to check his rewards again. With the newly received recovery potions exclusive to the tower, he set them aside specifically for John. He laid the pile of magic stones on the table and calculated what to do with them. Currently, he had 3.6 kilograms in his inventory. If he sold them, he would get about 1.8 million won. He thought to himself that it was time to consider cashing them in to cover his living expenses. Finally, the 10th day of his tower climbing journey arrived. That meant they had reached the 10th floor. As Ju-hyuk got home from work and changed his clothes, he thought about how he'd only meant to take a quick look at first. And yet here he was grinding away steadily, clearing one floor a day without missing a single session. Even yesterday's 9th floor mission in the jungle with the man-eating flowers was extremely easy. He had only hoped to complete the mission, but the S-rank reward was a truly unexpected bonus. This sense of security was so great that he seemed to have forgotten that John was a crazed assassin who had once taken 3 lives. He summoned John and gave him another 5 stars. Thanks to accumulating consecutive maximum ratings, John's presence time was extended by another hour. Ju-hyuk felt that giving high scores was really worth it when he saw John make a large heart shape with both hands to thank him. The two entered the Black Tower. On the 10th floor, his physical stats were greatly enhanced to match the level and its characteristics. At the same time, his combat skills were ready to be activated. He could clearly feel the change in his body inside the tower. Power was surging, and a mysterious energy was moving in his lower abdomen. The sensation made him feel like an untamable wild horse. With his confidence soaring, he boldly told John that he would also join the fight this time. However, John vehemently objected, declaring that if he got so much as a small scratch, he would slam his own head on the ground to atone. Despite John's persuasion that his encouragement and praise were more than enough, Ju-hyuk still insisted on fighting side by side, because he was feeling as energetic as a warhorse. But just as he turned his head, he came face to face with the giant eye of a hideous insect. His confidence vanished in an instant, replaced by terror. He wondered how other players could possibly kill this thing. At the same time, he thought that having to send 2 people to kill a single bug was a serious blow to human pride. John couldn't understand what he was muttering about. He asserted that this had nothing to do with pride, but Ju-hyuk still insisted that it hurt his pride terribly. However, as soon as he saw the ferocity of the 10th floor boss, he immediately backpedaled and handed over all the fighting to John. The giant mantis rushed forward to attack. John leaped up lightly, running along its body with an extremely serious expression. With sharp, lightning-fast sword strokes, he sliced the monster into small pieces. The 10th floor mission was completed perfectly. The reward this time was a whole 1 kilogram of magic stones, and as expected, he achieved an S rank again, along with another platinum badge. John approached to report that the mission was complete and also informed him they now had the right to proceed to the 11th floor. The 2 of them were teleported out of the Black Tower. With the 1 kilogram he just received, the total amount of magic stones in his inventory had reached 5.5 kilograms. Just as he had hoped, after collecting 10 platinum badges, a new privilege appeared. This time, the privilege was to copy one skill from a summoned entity. The list that appeared included Blade Burst Force, Shock Vicious Ambush, Poison Dagger Shadow, Step, Mysterious Disruption, Invisibility, and Shapeshift. John observed for a moment, then decisively suggested that he should choose Shadow Step immediately without a second thought. When asked for the reason, John explained that this skill was extremely useful for escaping if something went wrong. Ju-hyuk could move extremely quickly and quietly to get away. He felt a little offended that John was telling him to think about an escape route. He retorted, "Do I look like the kind of guy who would abandon his comrade to survive alone?" But then he still chose Shadow Step immediately. He told himself that swift footwork was truly a vital factor for survival in combat. Just as the saying goes, footwork is the soul of a battle. He was curious if it could be used in the real world, so he went outside to test it, but the result was still nothing. He grumbled, complaining about the system's inconsistency since summoning was allowed, but a copied skill was off-limits. The next day, which was also the 11th day of his tower-climbing journey, he decided to call the support center of the Awakened Management Bureau to report that he had awakened. He received warm congratulations and was informed that a government employee would visit his home soon to assist. He hadn't even had a chance to give them his address before they confirmed they would be there right away. After contacting them to arrange the sale of his magic stones, he felt exhausted. This was probably the most courageous decision of his 25-year life. Meanwhile, the Management Bureau's convoy was right outside. Deputy Director Lee Mina sat in the same car as team leader Guangjin. Guangjin asked about the Awakened who had contacted them from Daegu. It was yesterday, but she replied that she didn't think that person was the holder of the S+ record. Guangjin began to doubt whether that legendary figure truly existed. Just then, Mina announced that a new Awakening registration request had just come in and asked if he wanted to go check it out with her. Guangjin immediately agreed. He told himself that the whole team had to hustle as much as they could while they still had the chance. If this was really the person they were looking for, he planned to bring them onto the team. His elite team, even if it meant using up every last one of the best benefits the Bureau could offer. At the same time, Ju-hyung was busy cleaning his house. An employee from the Awakened Management Bureau had arrived. Just as expected, he opened the door and invited them in. Team leader Jang Guangjin introduced himself and Deputy Director Lee Mina, who was with him. He mentioned that she was also a player, so Ju-hyung could feel free to ask her anything. The presence of a woman made him even more nervous. She got too close, making him blush, and it seemed she instantly recognized him as the S+ rank player. Ju-hyung panicked and yelled, flailing his hands wildly. Because of her unexpected declaration, he wondered if there was some method of identifying the Awakened that he didn't know about. He chose to deny it and tried to act natural, but his actions betrayed him. He was as stiff as a robot. When he replied that he had heard about it, but that it wasn't him, his expression was a textbook example of someone lying, and of course it didn't escape her notice. Guangjin lightly tapped, reminding her not to scrutinize people like that. She dodged his hand and replied playfully. Guangjin apologized for her recent rudeness. As for Ju-hyuk, he could only silently hope that she was just testing him. Suddenly, an adorable tiny character appeared. It was Tabi, the mascot of Korea's Black Tower, a small black-winged tower holding a star scepter and striking a mischievous pose. Tabi began to introduce the tower, an ominous, pitch-black entity of colossal size, far surpassing any of the tallest buildings on Earth. The tower appeared simultaneously all over the world. One night, 25 years ago, every nation deployed their armies and scientists, but no one could get near it. It seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier. That is, until the players appeared. The tower is structured like a game where players must climb it one floor at a time. Outside players are just ordinary citizens, but inside the tower they can possess astonishing powers and skills. They upgrade their equipment with the rewards they receive, and make huge contributions to the global economy. But what if no one climbs the tower? Basically, if the upper floors are not conquered within 6 months, a countdown will begin, and eventually the tower will collapse. 3 years ago, the city of Mumbai in India disappeared in that very way. Each country usually has 13 black towers, and Korea has one located deep in the mountains of Gangwon province. The estimated number of players is only about 0.01% to 0.02% of the population. That's about 5,000 to 10,000 people. The number of awakened is indeed not very large. Even so, the progress of conquering Korea's Black Tower is going very smoothly. With the 65th floor already cleared, this is the second highest record in the world, just behind the United States, with the 66th floor. But there's no need to worry because modern society has its heroes. They are called players. Just as humanity once explored new continents, people today are exploring and understanding the Black Tower, the Awakened. They are the hope of this era. Therefore, they are encouraged to register as official players for the chance to become new heroes. That was the entire content of the mandatory viewing material for newcomers. Next, Gwangjin needed to perform some verification steps. He asked Juhyuk if he had truly awakened. Juhyuk said yes, and also shared that he had entered the tower and cleared a few floors. He took out some mana stones as proof. When asked how high he had climbed, he answered the 10th floor. Gwangjin and Mina exchanged a meaningful glance, because that was exactly the floor where the S-rank record holder had stopped. At this point, Mina became even more suspicious of him. She asked if he had heard about the recent sensational event, the global announcements. Juhyuk tried to act as natural as possible, replying that he had heard about them but had no idea who it was. He even added that it must be an incredibly amazing player. Seeing his stiff-as-a-board posture, Gwangjin told him not to be so tense, but inwardly both of them wondered if this was just extreme shyness, or if he was hiding something. They moved on to the terms of the contract. The government manages players by dividing them into two groups, the Elite Conquest Team and the General Conquest Team. The General Team plans and acts on its own schedule like freelancers. In contrast, the Elite Team maintains a close relationship with the Management Bureau. The government's Awakened are obligated to participate in high-level raids, but in return they receive many forms of support and benefits. One of these is personal protection outside the tower, because outside players are just ordinary people. In particular, if he joined the Elite Team, he would receive a basic annual salary. Juhyong started to imagine what would happen. If his identity as the S-rank record holder were exposed, the media would flock to him. They would dig into the story of how a loner living in Hanam-dong could achieve such a miracle. He would rather die than receive that kind of attention. Gwangjin added that if he registered for the Elite Team, he would have to record his entire raiding process with a body camera provided by the Bureau. But to the astonishment of them both, Juhyuk refused to join the Elite Team. He said he was perfectly happy with the general group. Gwangjin couldn't understand why, since the conditions for the Elite Team were so much better. He replied that he wasn't talented and was very afraid of dying. Stopping at a moderate floor and receiving reasonable rewards was more than enough for him. Gwangjin advised him to reconsider, but he was firm in his decision. Mina sighed, thinking to herself, this was another mistake. In reality, there are many people who only go to a certain level to farm safely, but this was the first time she'd seen someone say it so bluntly during an evaluation. This kind of coward is completely unqualified. Even if he applied for the Elite Team, he would never be accepted. The most important quality for the Elite Team is the will to climb higher. They respected his decision. Then Gwangjin asked him to enter the tower, as it was the final procedure to confirm his awakening and because it would be a waste to miss the only tower entry for the day. He suggested that Juhyuk try clearing a floor. While in the tower, Juhyuk could sense that the man was subtly probing him, wanting to confirm whether or not he had truly achieved S-rank. He agreed to clear a floor, but didn't forget to warn them that he usually uses up the entire time limit, so it might take them nearly 2 hours. That's not a problem, it's part of our job. Mina encouraged him. Just take your time, don't feel pressured. He braced himself before entering. He told them to feel free to watch TV and grab drinks from the fridge since he'd be a while. Then he vanished. Seeing him disappear into thin air, Wuhan-jin confirmed that he was truly an awakened. He asked Mina what she thought. She remarked that while she didn't know the extent of his talent, he was extremely timid. His words and actions were completely meek, so she predicted he would give up on the 11th floor. When asked why, she explained that the 11th floor is where a player's fear is tested. It's the habitat of the long-tailed tunnel centipedes. They aren't difficult monsters to kill, but a player has to kill 100 of those grotesque-looking things. She was certain a coward like him would quickly return to the safe zone and abandon the mission. Gwangjin knew her predictions had always been very accurate, so he was about to call the director to report that this time was another failure. Meanwhile, in the tower, Juhyuk summoned John. John thanked him for being called out. The mission for the 11th floor was to exterminate 100 long-tailed tunnel centipedes within 3 hours. Juhyuk felt nauseous at the thought of facing 100 of those disgusting centipedes. John declared he'd finish it in 5 minutes, but Juhyuk immediately stopped him. He ordered John to hunt very slowly, dragging it out for over an hour so he wouldn't set any S-rank records. He explained that there were people watching from the outside, so he would also dismiss the summon while still inside the tower. John replied that he understood his master's intentions. Juhyuk figured just showing them he entered the tower was enough. As for him persisting in clearing the floor that was to mess up his record, He wanted his performance to look terrible so he could escape the network's sweep, IB for S+ record holders. John began the hunt, but his speed was still too fast, so he had to constantly remind him to slow down. The hunting pace dropped considerably, and he thought that with this group, everything would be fine. But suddenly a large centipede burst up from right under his feet, making him lose his balance. The swarm of centipedes began to surround him in a panic. He tried to use a skill to escape, but his body froze and wouldn't respond. John saw this and panicked. He charged in like a whirlwind, clearing out the centipedes surrounding his master. He was furious that those insects dared to attack his summoner and began to slaughter them en masse. Ju-hyuk realized the situation was getting out of control and ordered him to slow down as much as possible. However, this time, John refused because his top priority was protecting his master's life. Suddenly, the system sound chimed, announcing that the 11th floor had been cleared with an S rank, along with a platinum badge. He now had permission to advance to the 12th floor. Ju-hyuk wore a dazed, emotionless expression as he was transported outside. Only 5 minutes had passed. Mina had been certain that this was when he would give up and come out. But to both of their astonishment, the global announcement appeared again. Black Tower, Korea has cleared the 11th floor with an S+ rank. At that very moment, Ju-hyuk appeared. Woo Han-jin asked Mina what was happening. She whispered that the S-rank announcement appeared the exact moment he stepped out, but the terrifying part was how incredibly serious he suddenly looked. Ju-hyuk mumbled to himself that he didn't want things to go this far. With the summoned entity looming behind him, he declared that the two of them would have to be silenced. He ordered John to tie them up immediately, but instead John lopped off both their heads. Ju-hyuk screamed in terror, demanding to know who gave him permission to behead them. The severed heads, now tied with red ribbons, began calling his name, causing him to repeatedly mutter apologies. But it all turned out to be his hallucination. In reality, they were still sitting across from him, and he suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, realizing he had just experienced a paranoid delusion. He tried to regain his composure. Gwangjin asserted once again that the elite team desperately needed a talent like him. Ju-hyuk, sweating profusely, managed a strained smile and began to explain in a jumble of words that it was all a misunderstanding. He insisted that him emerging at the same time the S-rank announcement appeared was just a random coincidence with another player. Despite his vehement denials, Woo Han-jin still presented a contract. Ju-hyuk was stunned to see it was a contract for the elite team even though he had requested the standard one. Gwangjin proudly declared that his case was on a completely different level from the norm, so he couldn't be treated like an ordinary player. The contract placed before him wasn't a standard one, but a one-of-a-kind super elite contract, the only one in the industry. The numbers and terms within it were enough to dazzle anyone. A base annual salary of 12 billion won his own private real estate VIP treatment and a top-secret security system. He would even be granted special immunity, something that would put a player almost above the law. Ju-hyuk realized with a shock that signing this was no different from becoming a new aristocrat. Wang-soo emphasized that currently in Korea, only the #1 ranked player, Yu Cholin, receives this kind of special treatment. He urged him to look it over carefully, as this was the absolute best the nation had to offer. Yet Ju-hyuk still shook his head, insisting that if it wasn't a standard contract, he wouldn't be a player at all. When they pressed him for a reason why he was refusing so vehemently, he replied that he hated attention. To him, fame was a burden, a pressure that exhausted his heart. It was only then that both Gwangjin and Mina realized they were dealing with an extreme introvert. Ju-hyuk further argued that while climbing the tower seemed interesting, he was only on the 11th floor, and the future ahead was far too uncertain. Gwangjin realized that forcing the issue would ruin everything, so he had no choice but to back down, agreeing to give him the standard contract. Ju-hyuk knew full well that if outsiders saw this, they would call him an idiot for turning down such glory and fortune. But I know that with privilege comes responsibility. Once I join the elite team, I won't be allowed to stop. I'll have to constantly push into new tower floors. Floors no one has ever cleared. I don't want to carry that burden. All I need is a more comfortable life than before, that's enough. At the Management Bureau headquarters in Seoul, Director Park received a report that was completely different from what he had expected. Gwangjin described Ju-hyuk as a timid player and had no ambition whatsoever. The director couldn't believe that such a person was the owner of 6 S+ records. Mina insisted there could be no mistake as the timelines matched up perfectly. Director Park slammed his desk, declaring that timid or not, it didn't matter. What mattered was his outstanding talent. He ordered his subordinates to recruit him at all costs. Ju-hyuk had to be brought into the elite team. Meanwhile, Ju-hyuk was throwing a fit at home. Because he had said no yet, they kept pestering him. He was taking his anger out on John. Even while scolding him, he felt that playing the part of an angry man was exhausting. He warned John that if he acted on his own again, he wouldn't be so lenient. The two entered the 12th floor of the Black Tower. This time the mission was to eliminate 20 ice javelin weasels within 3 hours. Ju-hyuk summoned John and didn't forget to remind him to work very slowly. Seeing John obey cheerfully, he silently hoped that this time the guy wouldn't betray his trust. He believed that if he just cleared the tower at a normal pace like everyone else, the management bureau would soon lose interest in him. But this place was bone-chillingly cold. Even though Ju-hyuk had prepared thoroughly, the actual cold far exceeded his imagination. He tried to grit his teeth and bear it, but his pale face didn't escape John's notice. John, worried sick, asked if he was okay. And even though he replied that he could handle it, the assassin immediately resolved to finish this quickly and get his master back to a warm room. He was about to stop him, telling him to take his time, but John had already shot off like an arrow. John muttered that if he wasn't careful, his master would catch a cold, and to him a cold was a terminal illness that directly threatened his master's life. With that logic, he slaughtered the monsters at an unbelievable speed. As a result, the system announced that he had collected enough for 15 platinum emblems and received the special reward, the energy shield equipment set. Ju-hyuk immediately put on the bracelet. This shield created a protective membrane that absorbed damage, disappearing when its limit was reached and having a 5-hour cooldown. Its effectiveness also increased with his level. When the barrier enveloped him, he felt like he was wearing a full-body invisible suit of armor. The best part was that this item wasn't restricted to use in the tower, meaning he could use it in the real world to protect his life. He mentally calculated that if he sold this item, he could get 2 to 3 billion won. For a moment, he thought about just selling the damn thing and retiring early, but greed, no. Ambition stirred within him as he thought about the better rewards on higher floors. He excitedly asked John if they could clear the 16th floor with an S rank as well. Contrary to his expectations, John replied that clearing the floor was possible, but he couldn't guarantee an S rank. This answer deflated Ju-hyuk. Looking at John nonchalantly eating a cookie, he started to waver again, thinking maybe he should go back to the plan of selling the bracelet to be done with it all. Meanwhile, Director Park was on pins and needles because the global S-rank announcements had gone silent for the past 15 days. Guangjin reported that the mysterious player seemed to be stuck on the 15th floor. Director Park flew into a rage, cursing the heavens for granting such a natural-born talent to such a coward. Although Guangjin admitted the difficulty would spike from the 16th floor onward, he still believed Ju-hyuk hadn't given up and suggested waiting longer. Just then, a message arrived from Ju-hyuk. He was on his way to the management bureau to use the player store. Director Park had an epiphany. He concluded that Ju-hyuk had been tirelessly grinding on the 15th floor to save up money for new equipment. Guangjin nodded in agreement, recalling how Ju-hyuk had no protective gear whatsoever when they visited his home. Director Park regretted having misspoken and berated such a cautious genius. He immediately ordered that as soon as Ju-hyuk arrived, he should be allowed to buy any item he wanted at a ridiculously good price. He deeply regretted having misjudged him for the past 15 days. Meanwhile, in a different turn of events, John's face was as pale as a sheet. Sweat poured down his face as he heard his master's request. Ju-hyuk wanted John to stab him with a dagger. To John, this was nothing short of psychological torture. He whined that if his master was unhappy with something, he could just beat him to death instead. Ju-hyuk got exasperated, explaining that he just wanted to test if the energy shield was working properly. He wasn't telling him to kill him. He couldn't understand why. John was overreacting to such a light touch. Seeing John pretend to be deaf, Ju-hyuk decided to do it himself. He grabbed John's hand, aiming the tip of the dagger at his own body. John froze. Blood began to flow. Ju-hyuk realized with a panic that he had forgotten to activate the shield. John was 10 times more frantic, screaming and demanding to chop off his own cursed arm, to atone. Fortunately, the recovery effect activated in time. John begged him never to do something so reckless again. He agreed and told him to hurry up and finish the hunt. In a flash, John moved like a phantom, taking down the creatures clinging to the tall trees. Estimating the hunt would take 10 minutes at most, Ju-hyuk decided to practice his skills in the meantime. He activated Shadow Step and was utterly speechless. He was so fast that he left an afterimage behind. Now he understood why. John had made him learn this skill. First of all, it was absolutely perfect for escaping. While engrossed in testing it, he suddenly spotted a goblin stealthily crawling towards him. It turned out it had been hiding carefully to avoid John, but now it was risking its life to attack him. Ju-hyuk hastily activated the energy shield. Thankfully, the protective membrane appeared just in time, right before the creature could bite his arm off. Terrified, he launched a kick that sent the goblin flying. It soared straight towards John like a perfect pass. John swung his dagger, finishing it off in midair. He was about to turn back and tease his master, who had just been playing soccer with a monster, but then John froze when he realized his master had just been in danger. He rushed over like a shot to check him all over for injuries. He even sniffed his armpits to make sure he was okay. John then started lecturing him about how reckless he'd been and that he wasn't allowed to do something so risky again. Ju-hyuk's ears were ringing from the scolding. All he could do was nod and promise to be more careful. After 15 days of tirelessly grinding on the 15th floor, he had become incredibly proficient with his skills. The mana stones he had collected weighed a total of 22.5 kilograms, worth over 11 million won. Gwangjin called, and when Ju-hyuk expressed his wish to visit the player shop, Gwangjin immediately insisted on sending an escort vehicle right to his house, even though he said he could get there on his own. But Gwangjin insisted it was a standard benefit for all contracted players. With everything settled, all Ju-hyuk could do was wait for a luxury car to pick him up and take him straight to the headquarters. As soon as he stepped out of the car, Captain Gwangjin was already waiting with a welcoming smile. He was greeted warmly, clearly feeling like he was being treated like a VIP. After completing his fingerprint data registration, he could now enter and use the shop anytime he wanted, without having to call ahead. Gwangjin offered to give him a tour, but Ju-hyuk declined, wanting to take his time and look around on his own. Entering the player shop area, he couldn't help but be overwhelmed by the luxury of the place. But strangely, there wasn't a single other customer in sight. He wondered to himself if it was because the prices were too expensive. His first order of business was to sell the magic stones he'd accumulated. The total came to 10,250,000 won, which would be transferred to his account within 3 days, after which he'd be cleared to use the money for purchases. He immediately decided to quickly pick out the essentials so he could go home and rest. Meanwhile, in his office, Director Park was asking about Ju-hyuk's purchases. Gwangjin reported that he was currently browsing, and to ensure his privacy, they had informed other players that the shop was closed for the day. As for the prices, Gwangjin revealed that he had instructed the staff to discount all items by 90%. He reasoned that if they gave things away for free, someone as sensitive and shy as Ju-hyuk would feel burdened and refuse, so selling them cheaply was the best option. Director Park nodded approving of this thoughtful approach. Back home, Ju-hyuk took out his first item, an adamantite rod that cost 2 million won. Next was a pair of basilisk leather walking boots priced at 3 million won. He had heard that standard equipment usually started at 20 or 30 million won, so he knew full well he had received a huge special privilege from Captain Gwangjin. On one hand, he felt burdened by the debt of gratitude. On the other, he was captivated by his new boots. His feelings were a complete mess, thanks to his energy shield, an all-in-one piece of equipment that replaced all other types of armor. And the privileges from his platinum emblem, he only needed these boots to complete his defensive gear. Ju-hyuk had promised himself not to be greedy while climbing the tower, but these special treatments were like the whispers of a devil slowly making him crave more. The next day he summoned John. The assassin gave a military-style salute and asked if they would be grinding on the 15th floor again today. But Ju-hyuk replied that they were heading straight to the 16th floor. The cooldown for his summoning skill had ended. This meant he could summon one more person. As the summoning process began, Ju-hyuk clasped his hands and prayed with all his sincerity. A purple light began to take form, but neither he nor John expected the entity to be so enormous. Its head smashed right through the ceiling. Ju-hyuk stood frozen in terror, his eyes wide and unfocused. He was sweating buckets, his mouth agape from the immense shock. At that moment, only a single question ran through his mind. What the hell did I just summon? While horrified by the giant creature, Ju-hyuk was also silently mourning his rental security deposit. With the ceiling cracked wide open like that, his deposit was as good as gone. Slowly, the new summoned entity's arms and legs began to appear. It was an insanely large man. Ju-hyuk couldn't even tell if this was a person or a monster. John looked extremely annoyed. He kicked the giant straight in the face and yelled at him to sit down. John grumbled that out of all the people, why did it have to be this guy? John cursed at the giant, saying he was ruining his life and that he should just drop dead and get it over with. Ju-hyuk wondered in surprise if the two of them knew each other from before. The giant seemed irritated. He said John's kick didn't hurt at all, it just felt itchy. John challenged him, threatening to slit his throat and tie a pretty little bow on it for him. Ju-hyuk quickly intervened, declaring that one broken ceiling was more than enough. No more trouble. John immediately obeyed. He told John to step aside so he could talk to his new companion. John pouted and said it was useless. Because this guy is famous for being a complete idiot in our world. John sarcastically added that he probably couldn't even remember the 3 supreme laws. The giant retorted that he had learned them by heart. But when John challenged him to recite them, he could only remember the first law, absolute obedience to the master. He got stuck on the second law about value and couldn't remember the third at all. John immediately suggested they should just kill him, so that he couldn't be summoned again for 100 days. Ju-hyuk shuddered. He didn't even know such a terrifying penalty existed. Just then the status window appeared. He was a barbarian warrior, a dim-witted meat shield from the Great Plains tribe, an unknown named R-Tree. He was a barbarian warrior who could be summoned for 10 hours, with a 3-hour cooldown. But Ju-hyuk couldn't hide his disappointment. R rank was the lowest rank he could possibly get. He thought to himself that he'd probably have to wait another month to try his luck again. He asked for the giant's name, but he said he'd forgotten it. He asked if he knew where he was or anything about the tower. The giant just shook his head blankly. Ju-hyuk was starting to feel discouraged. He decided to check the giant's detailed information, and suddenly, just like with John, he was pulled into the giant's memories. Ju-hyuk found himself standing in a lush green plain. There, the barbarian warrior was happily playing with butterflies. He was a warrior with a pure soul. He found happiness simply by living in harmony with nature. But hidden behind that innocent exterior was a superhuman physical strength revealed when a pack of giant, furious coyotes attacked. The oaf naively thought they just wanted to play, and so he accidentally crushed their bones. He was simply too dense. Eventually, a man found him, and confirmed the rumors were true. The man was extraordinarily huge. That person introduced himself as Aras and asked for his name, but the warrior had long forgotten it. It turned out the barbarian warrior had been tricked by a fake hero who turned him into a living meat shield to fight the mega monster Hydra with its body as hard as bronze and iron. He took the full force of the monster's deadly breath and fought on relentlessly. He ripped off each of the Hydra's heads with his bare hands even as his flesh was melting from the acid. But he was completely unaware. In his simple mind, he only wanted to protect his comrades. In the end, the continuous blasts of acid melted him to death. Tragically, those same comrades stood around and mocked his stupidity until his very last breath. Witnessing these memories, Ju-hyuk couldn't hold back his tears. He no longer cared whether the man was dense or not. He only felt sorrow for such a pure soul being taken advantage of. He reached out his hand, inviting the man to join him on his journey to climb the tower. The giant reached out his hand as well, but it was so large that Ju-hyuk could only grasp a single finger. He decided to give him a name suggesting 2 options, Joman and Gobang. The giant chose the name Gobang. Ju-hyuk promised to bring Gobang happiness, and when he asked if he trusted him, Gobang firmly declared that he would follow him to the end. Ju-hyuk turned to John and said that from now on, the 3 of them were a team. John's face clearly showed his displeasure, but in his mind, this twisted assassin had already hatched a dark plan he would train Gobang to be a proper meat shield. With their new lineup, the group advanced to the 16th floor. Gobang's booming, "Yes, sir," annoyed John so much that he kicked him for his slow reply. The naive Gobang immediately mimicked John's tone, driving him even crazier. And so the troll party, consisting of a cowardly player, a crazy assassin, and a dim-witted giant, officially entered the 16th floor of the Black Tower. This time the mission was to eliminate 30 goblin scouts within 5 hours. John immediately told Ju-hyuk to activate his energy shield and be ready to move, because the goblins here specialize in using poison-laced needles and stealth attacks. Just as predicted, a goblin fired a poison needle at Ju-hyuk, but John caught it just in time. The group had fallen into an ambush. Ju-hyuk quickly took cover behind a large rock. Meanwhile, a rain of poison needles poured down so fiercely that the rock began to crack. Estimating there were over 50 goblins hiding, he ordered Gobang to move forward and shield them. Instantly, Gobang's expression turned serious. Each of his steps shook the ground. He leaped into the air like a moving mountain. John suddenly noticed something strange. The goblins were suddenly fleeing in panic. He looked up and saw a colossal shadow covering the entire area. When Gobang landed, an earth-shattering impact erupted. It sent goblins flying within the blast radius, and the shockwave was strong enough to even blow John away. Ju-hyuk was stunned. He thought to himself, with that kind of weight and muscle, "This isn't a battle anymore. It's a meteor impact." The surviving goblins frantically fired their poison needles, but to Gobang they were nothing more than mosquito bites. Obeying his order to the letter, he completely wiped out the enemy forces. Ju-hyuk couldn't believe Gobang was only an R rank. Based on his combat ability alone, he should have been close to SSR rank. He realized the low rank was probably due to his intelligence stat being inversely proportional to his brawn. After the victory, the three of them returned home and enjoyed some fried chicken together. Gobang was absolutely crazy about it. Ju Hyuk generously praised his performance and told him to eat his fill. John, on the other hand, was his usual self. He ate while occasionally bopping Gobang on the head, reminding him to eat just one piece at a time. He sighed, wondering if there was any way for these two to ever get along. Suddenly, John bit into a spicy piece of chicken and his mouth felt like it was on fire. Ju Hyuk didn't miss the opportunity to tease him. The legendary assassin defeated by a spicy chicken wing. In the middle of the meal, Gobang suddenly blurted out, "Master is a good person." The unexpected comment made Ju Hyuk freeze. The giant explained it was because he gave him kitchen to eat. Kitchen? So I could live on. Ju Hyuk blushed, touched. He said it was nothing compared to everything Gobang had done, and that in reality he was the one relying on him. John immediately corrected Gobang with a smack, telling him it was chicken, not kitchen. Ju Hyuk flinched at how hard the hit was, and scolded John, telling him not to bully others. As they were enjoying their meal, John verbally apologized and claimed he was just educating Gobang, but in reality he was just mad that Gobang was inhaling all the fried chicken at the speed of light. The next day, the trio entered the 17th floor of the Black Tower. At level 17, Ju Hyuk could clearly feel power surging through his veins. His heart pounded, like an awakening warhorse, making him feel like he could take on the entire world. However, John was quick to pour cold water on his excitement, warning that people around level 20 often get overconfident and reckless, so I'll take the lead. Gobang chimed in, telling him to just stay back and let him protect him to the death. Suddenly, he felt rather small. Ju Hyuk reluctantly agreed. The mission on the 17th floor was to eliminate 30 goblin warriors, even though he had watched all the guide videos online when he actually came face-to-face with these ferocious monsters. And in person, Ju Hyuk still felt immense pressure. This goblin legion had at least 90 warriors, and even though they were low-level monsters, they employed tactics and surprising strategies. According to the guides he had studied, the standard approach was for players to retreat to a safe zone when the goblin battalion appeared. They were supposed to wait for them to split into small 3-member patrol groups, then lure each group out to be eliminated. The process was extremely time-consuming, but Ju Hyuk had no intention of following that snail-paced plan. He called to Gobang and gave the order to attack. Gobang let out a thunderous roar as power erupted from his entire body. With Gobang on the team, he was certain that the 22nd floor and even higher would be a piece of cake. He ordered the giant to wipe everything out secretly, looking forward to the next privilege he would receive. The goblin general ordered them into a defensive formation. They launched a rain of spears at Gobang, but the spears were like tickles on the giant's iron-hard skin. Gobang slammed into the enemy formation, sending them flying. The goblins were scattered everywhere. Ju Hyuk was amazed by the display. He realized tactics and strategy only mattered when both sides were on equal footing. Comparing Gobang to these goblins was like pitting 1,000 old bicycles against a K2 Black Panther tank. The system immediately announced Floor 17 cleared S rank, received 1 additional platinum badge. Ju Hyuk was incredibly impressed. John, standing by his side, observed his master's reaction. He was both surprised and a little disappointed that his spotlight had been stolen. The group advanced to the 18th floor, where the mission was to eliminate the goblin assassins. Once again, Ju Hyuk planned to send Gobang in first. These assassins used a stealth skill which started to confuse Gobang. The giant gripped the surrounding trees tightly, but he couldn't see the enemy anywhere. Gobang scowled and yelled loudly, telling them to show themselves. Just then, John's laughter echoed through the forest. He sneered that he had endured more than enough of that idiotic meat shield tactic. And now it was time for his master to feast his eyes on a real performance. The goblin's stealth skill was completely useless before his zone. He activated shadow steps, instantly becoming a black flash that cleanly sliced the necks of the monsters. The kill count skyrocketed. Ju Hyuk smiled victoriously. In truth, having these two entities cooperate and compete with each other was his plan all along. He knew how restless John had been since his role was overshadowed by Gobang. Sparking this competitive spirit was entirely intentional, and it was working perfectly. He set things up so they would push each other, helping him collect more badges. He needed to continue strengthening himself through privileges, and now he was very close to level 18. Finally, the moment had come. The time for the wild steed within him to run free. Before truly venturing deeper into the 18th floor, he carefully reviewed everything one last time. All tactical information was prepared. The goblin assassin's stealth skill was actually just at a rudimentary level. Ju Hyuk realized that with enough focus he could absolutely sense their movements. There was nothing to fear. He had practiced shadow steps countless times during his half-month of grinding on the 15th floor. He gently slipped behind one of the stealthed assassins, but just at the decisive moment he twisted his ankle. While off balance, his sword accidentally plunged straight into the monster's head. Talk about fortune favoring the foolish. That technical error still counted as a kill. He breathed a sigh of relief that things were still going according to plan, even if it was a little off script. But immediately another goblin closed in and attacked him from behind while John was still silently reaping the lives of the monsters, bringing the count to 25 out of 30. Just as he lopped off the next one's head, only the final 3 remained. Seeing this, Gobang charged in. He swung his arms and legs wildly. The 3 unlucky goblins were hit instantly. The giant was about to help more when John yelled his head off at him for getting in the way. At that moment, John was startled to realize his master had vanished from his sight. By now, Ju-hyuk had activated his energy shield to create distance from the monsters. A powerful blow landed squarely on his head. Without that energy barrier, it would have surely been a fatal blow. The goblins surrounded him, and Ju-hyuk entered a fighting stance. Perhaps thanks to the adrenaline pumping through him, the goblin's movements suddenly became sluggish in his eyes. It felt as if the whole world was slowing down. He took them down one by one. The system chimed floor 18 cleared S rank, received 1 additional platinum badge. John frantically searched, and upon seeing his master was safe and sound, dropped to his knees in relief. Ju-hyuk, full of pride, declared that he himself was probably the one who delivered the final blow. At the Management Bureau, Mina had just seen the global announcement about the S-rank record on the 18th floor. Director Park was ecstatic. Guanjin commented that Ju-hyuk seemed unstoppable and had prepared extremely well. Director Park even wanted to immediately publicize the identity of the person who set 8 consecutive S-rank records, but Guanjin stopped him, warning that it was too dangerous. Ju-hyuk had now become a national treasure, who needed to be protected even more rigorously than the elite teams. On the news, people began to buzz about a new wind sweeping through Korea's Black Tower. After 20 days of silence, an unprecedented 8 consecutive S-rank records had rewritten the history of tower climbing. The entire nation was frantically trying to uncover the identity of the mysterious player, who was now at level 19. John let out a long sigh and turned off the TV. Ju-hyuk, feeling uneasy, told him to just say whatever was on his mind. John finally spoke. "It's too fast, Master." He was referring to the speed at which Ju-hyuk was realizing and mastering his own innate talent. Ju-hyuk was completely baffled by John's words. He had never considered himself talented, so he assumed John must be talking about someone else. Not him. He brushed it off as a joke, but to John it was a frightening reality. The shadow step that Ju-hyuk had executed at the end of the last battle was truly flawless, so clean that even a seasoned assassin like John would find it difficult to replicate. That was precisely what worried him. John seriously warned that once Ju-hyuk began to taste the thrill of battle, his confidence would grow in direct proportion to the danger. If he became braver, things would get out of control. John reiterated their initial promise, safety first, survival above all. Ju-hyuk nodded in agreement. He affirmed he wouldn't do anything reckless and would just focus on dealing with one enemy at a time. John tentatively accepted this, but the premonition of a disaster caused by his master's overconfidence still haunted him. In the midst of the tension, Gobang suddenly spoke up, mocking John for looking pathetic, whimpering like he was about to cry. John immediately exploded, launching a thunderous kick at Gobang's face. He threatened to stew the giant in a pot. The impact sent Gobang flying straight into the refrigerator, causing everything inside to spill out. This time, it was Ju-hyuk's turn to want to cry for real. Seeing the jar of kimchi his mom sent spilled all over the floor, he screamed, ordering both summoned entities to get out immediately. Feeling tired and wanting some comfort, he decided to visit his parents the next day. The next morning, Ju-hyuk opened the door and entered the house with his usual greeting. His mother warmly told her son to come in. His father, with a slight smile, gently chided him that even though he lived nearby, he rarely visited. His mother immediately came to his defense, telling his father not to nag when their son was so busy. Ju-hyuk asked with concern about his dad's sore hip. Even though his father tried to stand up to prove he was fine, Ju-hyuk still advised him to lie down and rest as the hot stew was served. When his dad asked about his younger brother, his mom replied that Minhyuk had gone to buy tofu and would be back soon. During the meal, Ju-hyuk casually asked if the family was struggling financially. His mom brushed it off. She told him not to worry and that she would find a new job soon. His dad also told him to focus on his own life and to stop sending money home, to test his family's reaction. Ju-hyuk said half-jokingly, "It'd be great if I awakened right about now." Hearing this, his dad slammed the table, making him jump. He feared he had slipped up and revealed his secret. But it turned out his dad just burst out laughing, thinking it was the funniest joke of the year. He said there was no way his son could be awakened when he was a carbon copy of him, a grown man who still had to call his mom to take care of a single cockroach. His younger brother Minhyuk also chimed in, saying it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. His mom just smiled gently and asked why he wasn't at work today. Joo-hyuk had to lie that it was his day off, even though in reality he had quit his job long ago to focus on grinding the tower. His mom saw right through his lying face and started to get suspicious, but Joo-hyuk continued to play dumb. She said she believed him but didn't forget to warn him to never get involved with loan sharks. That reminded him of a shocking murder case related to the financial company Smile Capital, which he had been deliberately pushing aside. He hurriedly reassured his mom that would never happen, then changed the subject to why she lost her job. His mom told him she had run into a nightmare customer. While she was servicing a water purifier, the customer obnoxiously demanded that she also clean up his pile of recycling and food waste. She didn't care about her performance rating anymore. She gave the guy a piece of her mind in a fit of rage and ended up getting fired. Although his mom was a bit reckless, she was very brave. She's the type of person who can't turn a blind eye to injustice. That was exactly why his dad fell head over heels for her. He proudly declared that the greatest achievement of his life was winning her over. And of course his dad was a textbook beta male, a kind and gentle man. Joo-hyuk was the beta male son, and his little brother Minhyuk was the beta male grandson. This showed that his family's genes, while weak, were extremely stubborn. That's why they would worry sick if they knew he was venturing into the tower. So he decided to wait until things were more stable, before revealing that he had awakened. As he was leaving the building with his younger brother, Joo-hyuk handed Minhyuk a wad of cash. Minhyuk asked in confusion what the money was for. He replied that it was for their parents' living expenses. He told his little brother to give it to them and to keep an eye on them so they wouldn't overwork themselves. Joo-hyuk was about to turn and leave when Minhyuk called him back hesitantly. He thought the kid was getting emotional because of the tuition fee he had paid for him last time. He was about to put a hand on his brother's shoulder in an, "I get it, man. No need to thank me" gesture. But Minhyuk let out a sigh of relief and blurted out shamelessly, "Just giving money to mom and dad? Doesn't it feel like something's missing? I think you forgot my share." Joo-hyuk inwardly cursed the little brat but transferred him 500,000 won anyway, telling him not to spend it recklessly. Later, Joo-hyuk stood in front of the awakened management bureau in Hanam-dong. He had intended to go straight back to his studio apartment, but for some reason his feet had led him here. After visiting his family, his determination to get rich and provide for his parents burned even brighter. Gwangjin had told him to call ahead if he ever dropped by, but he figured he could just quietly slip into the shop. It would be mortifying if the man made a big scene welcoming him. Although he had an energy shield as the monsters on the higher floors grew stronger, he realized he needed a real physical shield. The shop employee quoted him a price of 100 million won. Joo-hyuk froze. He stammered that it looked heavy and too expensive. If this was the only option, he might have to pass. Inwardly, he was completely blown away by the astronomical price. To make matters worse, the salesperson was a woman, which made him so flustered he could barely string a sentence together. Joo-hyuk noticed the shop was unusually crowded today. It was a stark contrast to how empty it was last time. The employee showed him a round shield made from an adamant and xenium alloy. Because of its small size, it was very light. It also had a function that automatically countered attacks. He tried it on and was immediately sold. It was a perfect match for his mace, as if they were made to be a set. When he heard the price was 40 million won, Joo-hyuk decided to buy it. Even though he'd gotten an item he liked, he still thought that interacting with the female employee was more draining than fighting a horde of goblins. Just as he was about to leave, a man approached him. He immediately pegged Joo-hyuk as a newly awakened person from his awkward demeanor. The man introduced himself as Choi Hoso, a veteran player. Although he found the man a bit too forward, Joo-hyuk politely introduced himself. Hoso bragged that he was conquering the 30th floors, and he enthusiastically told Joo-hyuk, who was in the low teens, that if he ever ran into trouble on the 10th floor, he should just ask him. Joo-hyuk realized Hoso was a kind and extremely extroverted person. He marveled at Hoso's fearless communication skills and felt a pang of jealousy. A guy like this definitely had a girlfriend. That night, Joo-hyuk checked his status window. He had reached level 19, which meant he could challenge the 19th floor. But first, he summoned John for a discussion. The moment John appeared, he burst into tears upon seeing his master had bought another shield. He asked if he really needed to be that overly cautious. Joo-hyuk reassured him that he was a true beta male. He'd run away the second things got difficult. John made him promise not to rush in recklessly and to sacrifice them to escape if things got dangerous. He agreed. John then added with a great sense of camaraderie, "If a sacrifice must be made, please choose Gobang instead of me." To soothe John, Joo-hyuk took out the large portions of mandu dumplings he had bought earlier. John was ecstatic to be favored over the giant Gobang. However, as he was about to take a bite, the assassin's killing intent suddenly flared. He sensed something unusual from the aroma, while Joo-hyuk was still happily eating his portion. John asked a chilling question that made the air grow thick. "Master, is there anyone you currently hold a grudge against?" Joo-hyuk, chewing with his mouth full, shook his head and said no. But John coldly cut him off, saying someone outside was radiating intense bloodlust. The color drained from Joo-hyuk's face, and immediately after there was frantic knocking at the door, followed by a probing voice. He signaled for John to hide, quickly activated his energy shield, and took a defensive stance. Bam! The door was blasted open. A man holding a gun had shot the lock to pieces and casually stepped inside to greet him. Joo-hyuk's eyes widened. It was Choi Hosok, the kind player who had struck up a conversation with him at the shop that morning. Hosok had revealed his true colors as a cold-blooded player hunter. He pointed the gun straight at Joo-hyuk's forehead, demanding that he hand over the bracelet and all the items in his inventory if he didn't want his head turned into a beehive. Inwardly, Hosok was gloating. He was certain he'd picked the perfect juicy target, a coward who would obediently hand over all his assets at the mere threat of a gun. He urged Joo-hyuk to hurry up before he lost his patience, but he had no idea he had just walked into a death trap. Whack! John suddenly appeared from behind. He slammed the hilt of his dagger hard into Hosok's head. The stunned criminal's legs buckled and he crashed to the floor. Joo-hyuk froze for a few seconds before breathing a sigh of relief. He showered John with praise for handling it so cleanly. He was secretly glad that John knew how to hold back, only knocking the guy out instead of casually taking his life. Right then and there, Joo-hyuk realized this was an item broker, someone who murders players in the real world to steal their equipment. He suddenly remembered the warning from Gwangjin about how players outside the tower are as vulnerable as normal people. If not for this overpowered summoning skill, he probably would have been a goner. Once again, he realized just how broken his ability was. John started pulling out a ribbon, intending to tie a bow on Hosok. He suggested taking this piece of trash outside to be dealt with, but Joo-hyuk adamantly stopped him and insisted on calling the police. John insisted that just dumping him in a deserted neighborhood would be the end of it, while Joo-hyuk argued that upholding the law was the easiest way. Meanwhile, at the Management Bureau, Director Park was once again deeply shocked to hear that Joo-hyuk had visited a shop without his knowledge. When he heard the report that Joo-hyuk had only bought a single small round shield, he sighed with regret. If only he'd signed the contract, we could have equipped him from head to toe with the best gear. Director Park asked if they had determined Joo-hyuk's class yet. Gwangjin replied that because he bought a mace and shield, they suspected Joo-hyuk belonged to a melee class. A clear image of a confident knight holding a shield and mace appeared in their minds. But Director Park disagreed, arguing that if Joo-hyuk was a melee fighter, then even a full set of protective gear wouldn't be enough to keep him safe. Gwangjin replied that he would think of an excuse to give Joo-hyuk a full suit of armor. Just then his phone rang. Gwangjin was surprised to see it was the police calling and excused himself from the director to take the call. After listening, he froze, stunned by what he'd just heard. He immediately rushed outside, driving as fast as he could. He ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, silently regretting that he hadn't forced Joo-hyuk to sign the elite contract right away. Gwangjin's chest tightened with worry that something had happened to him. Meanwhile, at Joo-hyuk's apartment, the police had arrested Hosok for home invasion and armed robbery. Hosok screamed in agony. He tried to pin the blame on Joo-hyuk, shouting that he'd been kidnapped and that he was the real victim. Joo-hyuk panicked, yelling that Hosok was the one who broke in, but the police insisted on taking the homeowner to the station, too. He began to worry. For a moment, Joo-hyuk genuinely thought he was going to end up in jail. Just then, Gwangjin burst in. He was pale with fear from imagining himself behind bars. Hosok, on the other hand, was overjoyed to see Gwangjin, thinking he was finally saved. He immediately snitched, claiming Joo-hyuk had tried to kidnap and rob him. What he didn't expect was that Gwangjin slapped him hard across the face. Hosok was stunned. Gwangjin was furious that this bastard he'd dared to lie so brazenly to his face and plot the murder of a fellow player. Hosok still insisted he was the victim, but Gwangjin coldly announced he was revoking his player status. Then he slapped him again. Hosok couldn't believe it. No one would even listen to him. Gwangjin ordered the police to drag him away and said that the NIS would be taking over soon. The NIS specializes in crimes related to players, and they're famous for their interrogation methods. Hosok finally broke down completely. He admitted he was blinded by greed and begged for his life. Gwangjin knew it was all lies. This wasn't the first piece of scum like this he'd dealt with. He suspected Hosok was a repeat offender, and that sooner or later all his crimes would be exposed. Gwangjin sarcastically told Hosok to go ahead and find a lawyer, though he doubted anyone would be willing to take the case. After that, Gwangjin confirmed the arrest procedure with the police. He instructed them that if Hosok tried to escape into the tower during transport, they should just wait. He would eventually reappear in the exact same spot. Hosok cried and begged, but was dragged away nonetheless. Gwangjin turned to Juhyuk, his expression still terrifyingly fierce, and asked if he was hurt anywhere. Juhyuk replied that he was just a little shaken. Immediately, Gwangjin said his name and then bowed his head in a formal apology. He promised to take every measure to make sure this never happened again. In his heart, he knew he couldn't delay the elite contract any longer. It was no longer about benefits, but about protecting Juhyuk. The next day, John asked Juhyuk if everything was okay after what had happened yesterday. He replied that thanks to John, the police were able to catch the guy. John asked if the guy would be executed. Juhyuk said no. The assassin casually hid a dagger behind his back and asked where the prison was located. Juhyuk said he didn't know and warned him not to even think about finding out. Juhyuk then summoned Gobang. The giant was ecstatic when he received a 5-star rating. He cheered that he'd never seen so many stars before. Through this, Juhyuk also realized that Gobang could actually count. The party then entered the 19th floor of Korea's Black Tower. The mission was to kill 30 goblin mages. This floor was crawling with them, but they weren't much of a threat since they couldn't use powerful offensive magic relying mostly on curses. They could bind people and summon a few weak minions. The curses could be annoying, but that's about it. And again, Juhyuk had nothing to worry about. Gobang charged straight at the mages as they cast their dark curses. The giant took a deep breath. Then he let out an earth-shattering roar. Juhyuk was stunned. The curses were blown away by pure sound waves and unbelievably brutish method. Meanwhile, John slipped around to the back. He reminded Gobang to clear the floor as quickly as possible. Gobang replied that he remembered the mission was to wipe them all out. They swept through like a tornado. John slashed through his enemies, while Gobang crushed the rest with his fists. Juhyuk felt his blood boil, eager to jump into the fray, but before he could even move, the system announced that the 19th floor had been cleared. Seeing John and Gobang whispering to each other, John turned to him and said he felt refreshed. That's when Juhyuk realized the truth: those two had deliberately finished early, to keep him from getting a chance to fight. He had been completely played. The system announced he'd achieved an S rank on the 19th floor. The reward was a platinum emblem. The next day, Juhyuk stepped onto the 20th floor of the Black Tower. This was a major milestone often called the Talent Classification Test, and notorious for its extreme difficulty. John warned him that this place was extremely dangerous as it gathered every type of goblin imaginable, from scouts with poison darts and warriors with flawless tactics to assassins who could appear and disappear like ghosts, not to mention the curse-wielding mages and even massive hobgoblins. He bluntly stated that this floor was a real nightmare. He added that if it were him, he'd just find a safe place somewhere and wait it out. Then he nudged Gobang with his elbow, signaling him to speak up. Gobang puffed out his chest confidently and told Juhyuk that he didn't need to lift a finger. He would take care of everything himself. The mission for the 20th floor was to eliminate 100 goblins of all types, plus 1 hobgoblin within 10 hours. Failure meant either death or abandoning the mission. Juhyuk realized right away what those two were up to. They were planning to block him and sideline him from the fight again. John told Gobang to charge in and draw all the attention while he would seize the opportunity to strike while the enemy was in disarray. Gobang charged forward aggressively. The hordes of goblins simultaneously unleashed a barrage of skills, but this time Juhyuk refused to stand idly by. He wasn't going to let John call the shots. Ignoring the assassin's stunned expression, Juhyuk broke into an all-out sprint after Gobang. He even used the giant's back as a springboard to launch himself forward. He charged straight through a hail of attacks, feeling a sense of relief for finally taking action. Seeing this, John screamed at the top of his lungs. A short flashback begins. Juhyuk had been an introvert ever since he was a little kid. When he was young, if another child snatched his toy car, he wouldn't dare say a single word. Things only got worse when he started elementary school. Poverty became a constant burden. In middle school, Juhyuk was still a loner, watching his classmates laugh and joke around while he sat sullenly in a corner. By high school, he was even eating lunch by himself. Living like an outcast, Ju-hyuk was too afraid to change anything. He had never imagined he'd one day be fighting monsters. Back in the real world, he was the kind of person who couldn't even look his bullies in the eye. But monsters weren't human. He didn't have to face the fear of being judged, or the complexities of social interaction. They were just like monsters in a video game, so Ju-hyuk focused on a single task, wipe them out, and claim his reward. John was still screaming for him to stop. Spear-wielding goblins rushed him, but Ju-hyuk didn't break his stride. He weaved through them, got behind one, and smashed its face in with his shield. Ju-hyuk leaped from one enemy to the next, delivering blows with all his might. John was stunned. He couldn't believe it. In such a short amount of time, Ju-hyuk had become so proficient with his shadow steps. Suddenly, several powerful beams of light slammed into Ju-hyuk's back. John yelled, warning him to be careful. Ju-hyuk instinctively raised his shield. If it hadn't been for the energy shield, he would have been turned into a pincushion. It was only then that he truly felt the terror of this place, and he started to regret trying to act so tough. John yelled for him to keep running toward the cliff. Without a moment's hesitation, Gobang charged off, determined to protect his master. A few goblins were hot on Ju-hyuk's heels. He could feel his stamina draining fast. When he reached a dead end, he wondered, is this the place? Panic began to set in. There was no escape. Ju-hyuk didn't know what to do as the goblins closed in on him. He thought he was done for. But just then, Gobang stepped in front of him, raising his massive arm like an impenetrable shield wall. The giant stood tall before the trembling goblins and then crushed them to death. John also shot forward, slicing off the monsters' heads as he ran. He didn't forget to praise Gobang for a job well done. The goblin mages frantically began to chant, but John was faster. He took their heads right at the edge of the cliff, then glanced around to see if any were left. The kill count had already passed 100, so he was waiting for something stronger to appear. Ju-hyuk was truly astonished to see them wipe out the enemies in the blink of an eye. However, he looked extremely uncomfortable at that moment. He was drenched in sweat and trembling. He forced a strained smile and struggled to ask Gobang to move forward a little. Clearly, Ju-hyuk was traumatized by having Gobang's butt pressed right up against his face. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed as a large, imposing figure appeared. It had short legs, but a mournful expression. This was the final link in the goblin evolutionary chain, a hobgoblin. John immediately leaped down from the cliff and called out a name. Gobang understood instantly. He charged straight at the hobgoblin, blocking its sword strike with his own blade and pushing it back. Then he grabbed the creature by the neck with one hand. John looked satisfied. It seemed Gobang had finally proven his worth. He told Gobang to hold it tight. The moment he landed, John plunged his knife straight into the hobgoblin's eyes. Mission complete. 100 out of 100 goblins eliminated and 1 out of 1 hobgoblin slain. The 20th floor was officially cleared. Ju-hyuk leveled up and received his rewards. 2 kilograms of magic stones and 5 special tower recovery potions. John beamed and praised Ju-hyuk for his hard work. He was still in shock at how easily the monster had been defeated. Thinking it was best to leave everything to these two, Ju-hyuk bowed his head deeply, thanking them for protecting him and acknowledging their efforts. The 2 summoned beings also bowed in return. The system announced that Ju-hyuk had achieved S-rank on the 20th floor of Korea's Black Tower. The reward for his S-rank achievement was a platinum badge. With this result, Ju-hyuk was now qualified to challenge the 21st floor. Meanwhile, news of clearing the 20th floor with an S-rank spread like wildfire. The forums exploded. Someone said they thought it was all over, since there hadn't been an update for 2 weeks. Another person wondered how far they would go. Someone replied that the highest floor they could possibly reach was 30. Most people assumed this group belonged to some elite guild. A final comment asserted they were hiding for fear that other countries would try to recruit them. Ju-hyuk had set a new record with 20 consecutive S+ ranks. It was an unbelievable achievement, but he knew it would also bring big trouble if it attracted too much attention. Many suggested finding a way to control the press, but Director Park immediately dismissed the idea. He was worried that any confirmation of the S+ record holder's identity could be leaked. Immediately after he asked if they had finished investigating Ju-hyuk's family situation, Gwangjin reported that everything had been handled with utmost confidentiality. He stated that Ju-hyuk's father is Bo Ngucheon. He had been in an accident on an icy road and had to have hip surgery a few months ago and is currently in rehabilitation. Director Park asked about the support plan. Gwangjin replied that they planned to send him to the best, a rehabilitation center in the country. Director Park immediately approved it. Next was Ju-hyuk's younger brother Bong Min-hyuk, who is currently a freshman in college and about to enlist in the military. Director Park ordered that they support both his military enlistment and provide him with a scholarship. Finally, there was Ju Hyuk's mother, Hong Gamja. She used to work as a water purifier coordinator, but she is currently unemployed. It seems she was forced to quit after a conflict with a rude customer. Lowering his voice, Gwangjin emphasized that Gamja was the one they needed to be most careful with, because she is the most influential person in the household. With her fierce personality, it's rumored that neither her husband nor her sons dare to talk back to her. After hearing this, Director Park believed the plan would succeed. He ordered the awakened Management Bureau to use its full authority to ensure everything went smoothly. Gwangjin confirmed that the support for Ju Hyuk's family would begin immediately. Meanwhile, John's nose twitched as soon as he smelled the food delivery. Gobang squirmed with excitement, forcing Ju Hyuk to yell at them both to stay still. He told them to hide for a bit so they wouldn't be seen. Then he threw a thick blanket completely over Gobang. The delivery man brought 12 servings of sweet and sour pork and 8 bowls of jjajangmyeon black bean noodles. He even joked, asking if Ju Hyuk was throwing a party. Ju Hyuk just mumbled something to get by. The delivery guy laughed and said he had thrown in an extra serving of fried dumplings for free and wished him a good meal. In his head, Ju Hyuk thought the guy was so stingy. He ordered all this food and only got 1 serving of dumplings as a freebie. He checked the bag, but there wasn't even a single discount coupon. Anyway, he figured no one really uses coupons to order food these days. Ju Hyuk told the two they could come out now. John was mesmerized by the rich aroma of the black bean noodles while Gobang was drooling buckets. Ju Hyuk knew this giant, had never tasted anything like this before. Gobang shoved a whole dumpling into his mouth and praised how crispy it was, making John's jaw drop when he saw the giant chew up the plastic plate along with it. Ju Hyuk told them to go ahead and eat so he could check a few things. He opened his inventory. Ju Hyuk had unlocked a special privilege by collecting all 20 platinum badges. Curious, he wondered what the privilege would be this time. The system announced he had received a random box. Ju Hyuk's eyes widened. His curiosity was now more intense than ever. The random box contained any 3 items that could be found in the tower. The long list made Ju Hyuk's head spin, from magic stones, medicinal herbs, and rare metals to skill runes and rank-up runes, floor skip tickets, or even guaranteed SSR or the ultra-rare LSSR summoning tickets. He quickly scanned the list, telling himself that magic stones or 3 smithing items were too ordinary. Weapons and armor were also just average. Ju Hyuk analyzed that a rank-up rune would make him stronger, but he'd be stuck on his current floor. A floor skip ticket, while helping him climb faster, would make him lose out on the rewards, so the rank-up rune was still the better deal. The International Tower entry ticket was also quite interesting, but the ultimate prize he longed for was the LSSR summoning ticket. He daydreamed that if he got it, he'd dump all the grinding on the new recruit and just sit back and be carried straight to the top of the tower, living the easy life. Full of hope, Ju Hyuk opened the box and silently promised to live a virtuous life if he got something good. The box spun and his heart pounded. The first item appeared 10 kilograms of magic stones. Ju Hyuk was utterly disappointed, since this was something he could farm anytime. Although if he sold it, he could easily pocket a cool 5 million won. He opened the second item and received the Scepter of the Thunder God. The item was immediately registered in his status window. The martial arts style name made him wonder if it was an attack skill, but he'd check that later. Finally, he opened the third item. This time, Ju Hyuk was truly ecstatic. It was a summon rank-up rune. He hit the jackpot. This was exactly what he wanted most, because it could upgrade the rank of his summoned beings. The only problem was, who should he use it on? John was SR rank, while Gobang was R rank. In his heart, Ju Hyuk let slip the thought that they were both idiots, but he quickly corrected himself, calling them his reliable comrades. He considered giving it to John since the two had shared so many meals together, but to be fair, Gobang was the one who trained more. This rank-up rune would upgrade a being, based on its latent potential. During the rank-up process, the summoned being cannot be called out. Since he wasn't lacking firepower, Ju Hyuk decided he would summon John later and use the rune on him. For now, he chose to test his new skill first. The skill was called Scepter of the Thunder God. It imbued his weapon with the power of lightning, and included 3 forms. This was a perfect growth-type skill since he needed a real offensive move. He decided to learn it. The first form, Soul-Chasing Thunder, was immediately unlocked. Ju Hyuk could feel the technique being transmitted directly into his brain. He tried swinging his finger to activate Soul-Chasing Thunder, but nothing happened. A heavy, awkward silence filled the air. He knew it wouldn't work if people could use power that way. In the real world, society collapsed a long time ago, all because of guys like him. Ju Hyuk told himself. I'll enter the Tower of Trials later. A moment after, John curiously asked why. Suddenly, he started swinging his mace wildly. Ju Hyuk explained that he had just received a new skill from a privilege reward. John immediately asked if it was an attack skill. Ju Hyuk nodded and excitedly added that it was a growth-type skill. Hearing that, John shrieked and dropped the bowl of noodles. Gobang quickly snatched it up from the floor and started practicing with it right away. This made John fly into a rage because that was the last bowl and he forced the guy to spit it out. Amidst the chaos, Ju Hyuk unsummoned them. The next day, Ju Hyuk sat deep in thought. He knew exactly what John was worried about. A summoner's gift means that the summoned entity accounts for most of the player's combat power. In other words, a summoner doesn't need to rush to the front lines, especially an unconventional one like him. The person from some parallel universe? The one who had a contract with John before him was surely much stronger than Ju Hyuk, yet he still died and his world collapsed along with him. Ju Hyuk understood why John was so obsessed with his own safety, but he was a man too. He had a small taste of being an alpha male and wanted to at least test the skill he'd just learned. They were bound by absolute obedience, so he believed he could persuade them. When he summoned them both, they appeared pale and dejected. Ju Hyuk wondered how they could get so worried, just in one day. John confessed he was afraid that attack skill would become poison. He had been anxious since the 20th floor. The only reason he felt at ease back then was because they were only fighting goblins. All of Ju Hyuk's suspicions were confirmed. John was truly terrified of the idea of him fighting on his own. John stated flatly that an orc was out of the question. Ju Hyuk had to apologize first, saying he was about to commit a serious sin. At this rate, the battle would be over before he could even touch a single hair on the monsters. An orc froze in confusion when it saw John run past without even trying to stab or slash it. Ju Hyuk realized immediately that John had intentionally left this prey for him. He charged forward with all his might. John called out from behind, saying he would stand and watch. The orc spotted Ju Hyuk. It swung its greatsword in a wide arc, but Ju Hyuk quickly ducked low to dodge the blow. Then he leaped high into the air. First form of the soul-chasing thunder mace. It was essentially a straight downward smash. Golden light crackled around the mace as he activated the state of the Thunderlord. The blow descended straight onto the orc's head. The mace pierced through its defenses with ease. The monster was much weaker than he had imagined. Ju Hyuk felt a surge of exhilaration at his first victory. As the corpse collapsed to the floor, he stood beside it, still unable to believe how easy it was. In his bloodlust, he was about to charge the next one when, unexpectedly, Gobang crushed his target in an instant. Both John and Gobang glared at him. Ju Hyuk awkwardly said, "Well, a deal's a deal, one and done." And with that, he completed the 21st floor's mission and leveled up, receiving 2.1 kilograms of magic stones and 5 special recovery potions. But it didn't stop there. He continued to set a new record with an S rank on the 21st floor, pocketing another platinum badge. The next day, he entered the tower again and was given special permission to beat down a desert orc. This helped him achieve S rank on the 22nd floor. The following day, Ju Hyuk took down a cave orc and, as usual, nabbed the S rank on the 23rd floor. Even the volcano orc was a bit of a hassle, but he still managed to land the final blow. Just like that, he conquered one floor each day with the help of John and Gobang. Everything went as smoothly as flowing water and drifting clouds. He got an S rank on the 24th floor. Another day passed. Finally, it was time to conquer the 25th floor he had been eagerly awaiting. The fact that he could only take down one enemy a day was really not satisfying at all. But right now, he needed to build trust with these two subordinates. Because John and Gobang were always stuck together like glue, he still hadn't found a chance to give them that precious item. He decided to use this moment to give the rune to John and summoned him. John was a little surprised since Ju Hyuk had said he was going to rest today. He casually tossed the stone to the guy, saying that he had just picked it up on the way. John looked confused and asked if it was something to eat. Ju Hyuk told him to just check it. As soon as he realized it was a summon ascension rune, John froze completely. An item that could upgrade a summoned entity's rank. He couldn't believe his eyes. Ju Hyuk asked if he liked it. John stammered, asking if his master was really giving it to him. If he ascended, he would reach the SSR rank. The mere thought of it moved John to tears. Now he would be able to protect Ju Hyuk even better. Seeing the undeniable smile on John's face, Ju Hyuk felt his own heart fill with joy. Ju Hyuk asked if John wanted to begin the ascension process immediately. John nodded, but added that rushing it would be very dangerous. Ju Hyuk realized this wasn't something to be taken lightly. The assassin decided that for today, He would return to perform the ritual in the most proper way. He promised that when he came back, he would have a completely new form. Ju Hyuk wasn't used to John leaving so early, so he told him to stay and hang out a little longer. John chose to stay and watch TV. He asked which channel was showing reruns, but Ju Hyuk suggested watching on VOD to have more control. John just clicked his tongue. For some reason, his master was always so stingy with every penny. While John was furiously flipping through the channels, an image flashed by that made Ju Hyuk freeze. He yelled at John to stop. John asked blankly what was wrong. Ju Hyuk told him to go back to that channel and rewind until his mother appeared on the screen. Ju Hyuk was stunned. Why was his mother on the news? She was standing in front of a skyscraper holding a large sign that read, "Protest unjust contract terminations, improve working conditions for water purifier management staff. End the tyranny of the corporation." In her heart, she couldn't accept being fired so unreasonably. The story is that a customer had asked her to sort and throw out recyclable trash, even though she was only there to service the water purifier, a task that was clearly not part of her responsibilities. And yet the company forced her to apologize to that customer. Because she had done nothing wrong, she firmly refused, and what she received was a cold contract termination notice. For more than 10 long days, she protested all alone. All she got in return were sarcastic remarks from the company's executives. They claimed she was wasting her time imitating things she saw on TV. The anger inside her was boiling. It felt as if they mocked her one more time, she would immediately pounce on them and fight to the death. Just then a man approached her. She thought it was just another person coming to preach some nonsense. But the man smiled and said that he saw she had endured a great deal. He introduced himself as Jang Sok, a lawyer from the park and Kim law firm. As soon as she heard the word lawyer, she immediately became highly vigilant. Her first reaction was anger. She thought the company had sent a lawyer to threaten her, so she declared bluntly, "Go ahead and sue me. I won't back down." The lawyer calmly told her to relax. He explained that he was here for the complete opposite reason. He offered to sue the Ginspearing Water Corporation, and he gave her his business card. Park and Kim was one of South Korea's top law firms, and they wanted to represent her completely free of charge. He said that he had heard her story through an acquaintance. After she filed a petition with the labor office, he also swore that he wasn't a con artist. Seeing the still skeptical look on her face, the lawyer added that this was part of the firm's annual project to support the underprivileged in society. She grunted, although still a bit suspicious. She could sense this lawyer wasn't lying. The lawyer told her to consider this a small gift to compensate for the hardships she had endured and affirmed that the firm would put its honor on the line to guarantee a victory. Having come this far, she decided to go all in and place her trust in him. Her decisiveness couldn't help but impress the lawyer. He immediately suggested taking the matter to the media. Reporters, as if from nowhere, swarmed in and surrounded her. The lawyer told her to take her time answering and not to hide any details, because every injustice, no matter how small, was a weapon to expose the true face of that corporation. In front of the public, she nodded with determination. Meanwhile, Ju Hyuk was in a state of extreme torment, knowing his mother was suffering alone. Seeing his mother protesting by herself, he wondered what was the point of having 2 sons when they couldn't be of any help to her. At that moment, he also wondered how she could afford a lawyer from Park and Kim, where the fees were surely astronomical. Seeing his master's distress, John drew his knife. He grunted and asked if he needed him to pay a visit to the Ginspearing Water Corporation. Although touched that John understood, he immediately stopped him. Seeing that his mother seemed to have found a good lawyer, he decided to send money home to handle things. The 21 kilograms of magic stones he had been saving up were worth about 10 million won, and if that still wasn't enough, he planned to sell his energy shield set as well. Just then, his father called. He asked if he had seen the news and told him not to worry too much, because his mother's legal fees were completely free. Ju Hyuk was stunned. He was just preparing to send money home. His father chuckled, saying he knew full well there was no way he could manage to get that much money in such a short time. He told him to just focus on his own affairs, and then added boastfully that he had just received a call from Yusung Hospital. His father explained that the orthopedics department there had a program for hip joint surgery and rehabilitation, and he was lucky enough to be selected. In a few days, he would be admitted to the hospital. All expenses from treatment to room and board were 100% free. His father was overjoyed by the continuous string of good luck, but Ju Hyuk started to feel that something wasn't right. He agreed with his father and promised to visit soon. Yusung Hospital was a top hospital in South Korea owned by a large corporation. The good news was obviously good, but everything was happening with such a strange coincidence. It made him unable to shake his suspicions. Then it was Minhyuk's turn to call. With a series of strange things happening to his family one after another, he couldn't help but wonder what the hell was going on. Minhyuk asked if he had seen their mother's interview. His younger brother said furiously that he just wanted to teach those bastards a lesson. Their mother had worked herself to exhaustion from sales to all sorts of unnamed jobs, and Joo-hyuk knew that better than anyone. Minhyuk added that he planned to give all his allowance to their mother, since the lawsuit would surely be very expensive. Joo-hyuk reminded his younger brother that he still needed to buy a laptop, but Minhyuk said it was fine. He would still have enough money to buy it after paying tuition because he had just received a scholarship. At that very moment, he was at the office submitting the scholarship application. Minhyuk was starting to believe that if you live an honest life, good things will happen. Joo-hyuk asked where the scholarship came from. Minhyuk replied that it was a national scholarship from the Bureau of Awakened Management. They still awarded many of them every year. Joo-hyuk told his younger brother to study hard, but in his heart, all his suspicions were completely confirmed. This wasn't some act of God. From his mother's lawyer to his father's hospital fees and Minhyuk's scholarship, every single thing was too much of a coincidence. He was certain it was all the work of the Bureau of Awakened Management. Meanwhile, Kwang-jin was sitting in a car when he received a phone call. The person on the other end of the line said they wanted to meet. Kwang-jin agreed immediately and even offered to pick them up to go eat together. The two sat in a private dining room. Joo-hyuk got straight to the point and asked why Kwang-jin did all those things. Kwang-jin feigned ignorance and asked, "What things?" Joo-hyuk listed his mother's lawsuit, his father's hospital fees, and his younger brother's scholarship. Kwang-jin calmly admitted that it was necessary. Joo-hyuk realized the man wasn't even trying to hide it. Kwang-jin explained that if Joo-hyuk's family had problems, he certainly wouldn't be able to focus, and that would directly affect the progress of his tower climb. Joo-hyuk understood that logic, but he still felt uncomfortable because they acted without discussing it with him first. He knew this kind of special treatment was usually reserved for the elite team while he had only signed up for a standard contract. Suddenly, Woo-han Jin slammed his hand on the table. The man placed a file in front of him, an elite-tier contract. He demanded that he sign it immediately. Joo-hyuk felt completely cornered. He realized Kwang-jin had prepared for this very thoroughly. Despite that, he still lacked confidence in his natural talent. In his eyes, there was nothing special or outstanding about him. Before Joo-hyuk could react, Kwang-jin abruptly shot to his feet. He asked in a low voice if he truly believed he was ordinary even after setting unprecedented records that no one had ever achieved. What Joo-hyuk was speechless. For someone who had cleared 24 consecutive floors with an S+ rank saying he was nothing special, didn't sound like humility at all. It sounded more like a ridiculous denial of reality. Kwang-jin bowed deeply as he spoke, which startled Joo-hyuk, who told him he didn't need to go that far. But Kwang-jin immediately brought up the incident with that bastard Hosok. He insisted that Joo-hyuk join the elite team to receive the treatment he deserved for all he had accomplished. Joo-hyuk felt embarrassed by this attention, so he quickly told him to sit down. Kwang-jin added that if he signed the contract, similar incidents would never happen again. He would be protected at a VIP level. Joo-hyuk replied that he felt uncomfortable, having someone following him all the time. Moreover, he couldn't record his entire tower climb. This was the biggest reason for his hesitation, because the elite contract required recording battles, and he didn't want John and Gobang to be exposed or dragged into trouble. Kwang-jin asserted that the recording could be handled however he wanted, and the security team was also completely negotiable. This finally made him waver. Joo-hyuk asked for more details about the arrangements. Kwang-jin explained that normally, Joo-hyuk would live alone in a high-security residential area. Bodyguards would only follow him when he went out, and if he wanted, they would also assign people to protect his family. Joo-hyuk reminded himself not to be swayed so easily. But right after that, Kwang-jin delivered the sweet final blow. Just by signing the elite contract, they would immediately provide 2 houses, one for him and one for his family. This move hit Joo-hyuk right where it mattered, an offer he couldn't refuse. He had already started to picture that future in his mind. Even so, he told Kwang-jin that he appreciated his decisiveness, but he needed to be sure if it was okay to make such a big decision on the spot. Seeing his expression, Kwang-jin knew the fish had taken the bait. He assured him that he had full authority from the director and pushed the contract towards him, urging him to sign it. Joo-hyuk picked up the pen but then paused. Kwang-jin asked if something was wrong. Deep down, Joo-hyuk felt anxious because everything was moving too fast. He asked for more time to think, and when Kwang-jin asked why, he answered honestly, that he wanted to ask for advice before making a final decision. Kwang-jin nodded and agreed to wait. The next day, John was summoned. He proudly declared that a special ultra-rare assassin had appeared. His entire body glowed so brightly that Ju-hyuk had to shut his eyes tightly, crying out in pain as the light nearly blinded him. The ranking up process was complete. John was now SSR rank. The light was so overwhelming that Ju-hyuk had to tell him to tone it down. John asked if he was going to summon Gobang too. Ju-hyuk replied that before challenging the 25th floor, there was something he needed to discuss privately, which was why he only summoned John. John nodded, saying it made sense, since he couldn't have a proper conversation with that dim-witted Gobang anyway. Ju-hyuk then told John about his meeting with the team leader from the Awakened Management Bureau the day before. He explained the offer he received and confessed. He was torn between staying on the normal team or joining the elite team. When he asked for his opinion, John immediately voted for the elite team. He asserted that Ju-hyuk was already a player at the national authority level, so he deserved to receive corresponding treatment. Ju-hyuk was still wondering if it would be okay, because if they joined the elite team, they might be forced to climb to the 60th floor or even higher. John reassured him that it was entirely possible, but when Ju-hyuk said he would train hard to not be a burden, John immediately rejected the idea. He told him he didn't need to put himself in danger through training. All he needed to do was live a long life. That alone was more than enough. Your safety as my master is your power, John emphasized. Ju-hyuk tried to argue, but John repeated firmly, as long as you live long enough, everything will fall into place. He explained that in his old dimension, there were countless legendary SSR rank summons. As long as Ju-hyuk stayed alive, the day he summoned them all, they would come. And at that time, they would all be completely loyal to him. Ju-hyuk curiously asked if there was anything stronger. John revealed that there were even demigod rank monsters outside the ranking system entities far beyond human limits. This clearly caught his attention. When Ju-hyuk asked if he could summon those creatures, John answered honestly that for now he couldn't. Therefore, John showed him the best path: live, long, and persistently use the random summon. That was his ultimate ability, his true finishing move. The cooldown for the random summon was about a month, meaning 12 times a year. If he was lucky enough to get a cooldown reduction item, that number could be even higher. Within a year, he could have an army of 12 or more powerful beings. Of course, if bad luck followed him, he might get nothing. Looking at the countdown timer, he saw there were 19 days, 10 hours, 17 minutes, and 8 seconds left. Finally, John instructed him to be firm and demand one single condition: the right to decide when to climb. Unexplored floors must belong to Ju-hyuk alone, without any outside interference. Ju-hyuk was surprised, not knowing he had that right. John explained that this was extremely important. If he couldn't secure this condition, all sorts of trash would start jumping in, pressuring him, and demanding he climb the tower even when he wasn't ready. John's voice became unusually sharp. Ju-hyuk could tell this advice came from a memory. John's past trauma warned him to never get dragged into anything. But as long as that condition was met, he believed that accepting support from the government was perfectly fine. Ju-hyuk was quite surprised that John supported the idea, and he sincerely thanked him for the valuable advice. Afterwards, Ju-hyuk summoned Gobang. The giant greeted his master as usual. John, standing behind, cleared his throat and asked if Gobang was going to greet him too. Gobang stubbornly replied that a warrior doesn't just greet anyone casually. John immediately got cocky, declaring he was now SSR, rank, even spelling it out letter by letter. Super rare, you know. He didn't forget to emphasize that he had 2 S's before the R, while Gobang was just a measly R rank. Gobang mumbled that John was being unreasonable, but John yelled at him to shut up, saying the difference in their ranks was crystal clear. You piece of trash! Ju-hyuk noticed that Gobang started to avoid John's gaze. With a 2-rank difference, even an idiot like Gobang could feel the pressure in the air. Ju-hyuk made a mental note that the next time he got a rank-up scroll, he would definitely give it to Gobang. He asked if this time they could get another platinum emblem. John scoffed, telling him that was a stupid question. He was an SSR now. The group entered the 25th floor of the Black Tower. The mission was to eliminate 100 orcs of various types and an orc war chief within 10 hours. Ju-hyuk observed a large number of orcs frantically rushing toward them. He planned to handle 1 or 2 himself. John said this would be a warm-up to celebrate him reaching SSR rank and ordered Gobang to charge ahead and draw all their attention. Gobang immediately obeyed. He sprinted and then leaped high into the air. The orcs looked up stunned as he fell from the sky like a meteor. Just then, John made his move. A true SSR entity attacked. His speed was so incredible that it left only a faint blur in Ju-hyuk's eyes. John was like a fighter jet, strafing the battlefield. He unleashed countless blades, piercing several orcs at once, then activated his blade explosion skill. The orcs that were hit exploded on the spot. Even those standing nearby were thrown back by the aftershock. This was no longer a simple explosion. It was like the firepower of an anti-tank bazooka. A few orcs seized the opportunity, while John's back was turned and charged forward, spearing him. The orcs grinned triumphantly, but their smiles vanished in an instant. John's body vanished into thin air, and a second later he reappeared behind them. He activated Cruel Poison Strike and easily lopped off all their heads. John looked like he was genuinely enjoying this massacre. The remaining orcs trembled in fear. John mockingly asked why they all looked so gloomy. Then he activated Poison Blade, declaring that this was just the beginning. Ju-hyuk realized he had to act fast or John would clear the entire floor. He activated Shadow Steps and rushed toward a group of nearby orcs. They all turned to face him at once. He still remembered John telling him he just needed to live a long life, but Ju-hyuk truly wanted to become stronger so that the people who cared about him would no longer have to worry. He didn't want to rely on John forever. He dodged the swing of an orc's blade and landed a powerful kick right on its butt, sending it sprawling to the ground. The monster scrambled back up immediately, a look of complete confusion on its face. Ju-hyuk didn't give it time to recover. He activated State of the Thunder God First Form Soul-Chasing Thunder. The heavy blow came smashing down, crushing the opponent's skull. Blood splattered everywhere. The orc collapsed, screaming in agony. Seeing more orcs charging at him, Ju-hyuk used Shadow Steps to weave nimbly through the encirclement, striking continuously. Suddenly his eyes widened as a system notification appeared, unlocking the second form of the state of the ancient thunder god. Chain Thunder. Excitement exploded within Ju-hyuk. Knowledge of the new skill instantly flooded his mind. The way Chain Thunder worked was completely different. He began to spin his mace and charged straight ahead. When the skill was activated, bolts of lightning struck down from above, splitting into 5 extremely powerful electric beams. It wiped out multiple targets at once. Ju-hyuk grinned triumphantly, realizing this was an incredibly useful area of effect attack skill. From a distance, John frowned when he caught a glimpse of the lightning. He wondered since when orcs knew how to use thunder magic, but when he saw Ju-hyuk on a rampage, his jaw nearly dropped. His eyes looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. He ran for his life toward him, then screeched to a halt, tears streaming down his face as he scolded Ju-hyuk for forgetting his promise to only hunt one monster per floor just because he unlocked a new skill. Ju-hyuk was about to apologize out of habit, but then he stopped himself. Why should he have to apologize to his own summon? The thought irritated him. He was sick and tired of having to tiptoe around John. He snapped that even if he was a beta male out there inside this tower, he was the ultimate alpha, the supreme ruler. John calmly replied that his safety came first. This only irritated Ju-hyuk even more. He pointed forward. He challenged John, just let the orc war chief appear. I'll charge right in and smash its skull, you'll see. But before he could finish his sentence, a loud explosion erupted as if on cue. The giant orc war chief appeared instantly. The moment their eyes met, Ju-hyuk screamed for John to save him. John grabbed him and whisked him away at lightning speed. Ju-hyuk's face was pale. He was green with regret for not listening to John sooner. John threw him behind Go-bang and ordered the immediate elimination of the chief. The chief let out a deafening roar, trying to intimidate them, but Go-bang's hands began to glow. The giant's fist slammed directly into the chief's weapon, bending the blade with sheer force. The monster was stunned. Go-bang didn't stop. Both of his fists crashed down hard on his opponent's shoulder. The dry crack of breaking bones echoed. At the same time, John zipped behind it and activated Cruel Poison Strike. His daggers flashed with deadly light. The orc war chief's head fell to the ground. The 25th floor was officially cleared. Ju-hyuk leveled up, receiving a reward of 2.5 kilograms of magic stones for achieving an S rank on the 25th floor of Korea's Black Tower. He also received another platinum emblem. He was now qualified to challenge the 26th floor. As he stepped out of the tower, a special privilege for those who have collected 25 platinum emblems appeared, the recurrence privilege option. Looking at the list of options. Innate talent enhancement skill, copy, random item and summoned. Entity. Rank up. Ju-hyuk knew he'd hit the jackpot without a moment of hesitation. He chose to enhance his innate talent because only a fool would pass up this opportunity. His status window appeared. Name Ju-hyuk, level 26. Innate talent. Enhanced Summoning. Allows summoning a maximum of 3 entities at once. Innate Skill Summoning. Skills designate. Summon, Random Summon, Dismiss Summon. Combat Skills, Shadow Step, Primeval Thunder. Juhyok was thrilled to see his summon limit had increased to 3. Including him, they could now form a full 4-person party. The cooldown for random summon was about 18 days, and he began to wonder who the third member would be. But for now, he asked his 2 underlings what they wanted to eat. John loudly demanded spicy tonkatsu. Juhyok was surprised since John couldn't handle spicy food, but the assassin declared that he was an SSR now. The days of fearing spiciness were over. Juhyok gave him a doubtful look and wished him luck. When the food arrived, Juhyok praised them both for their efforts on the 25th floor and told them to eat. Gobong dug in heartily, saying it wasn't spicy at all. He even said it was a little sweet. Seeing this, John confidently took a bite, and his tongue immediately felt like it was on fire. He collapsed onto the floor, looking as miserable as if he'd been poisoned. Gobong casually told Juhyok that the assassin was about to kick the bucket. He said the master should just get rid of him and summon someone else. After conquering the 25th floor, Juhyok thought it was time to tell his family the truth. Later that day, he brought home some premium beef. Minhyuk's eyes widened as he asked where he got the money for something so luxurious. Juhyok just whispered that he would explain later. His mother, worried about the cost, demanded the receipt to return it, but his father waved her off. He said the family had been through a lot. If their son was being filial, they should just enjoy it. The whole family gathered around the dinner table. His father ate while praising the beef, saying you could really taste the quality. Juhyok's mother joked that the men in their house were true carnivores. She thoughtfully also brought out some fruit for everyone. Looking at this warm and cozy scene, Juhyok felt a sense of relief. All the troubles from his mother's lawsuit to his father's illness were finally settled. He took a deep breath, mustering the courage to break the mood. I have something important to tell you all. He confessed that he had awakened and was now working as a player. The room fell dead silent. His parents and Minhyuk all stared at him in disbelief. Then they burst out laughing, thinking he was pulling a prank. Realizing that mere words held no weight, Juhyok knew there was only one way to prove it. He immediately contacted Gwanjin. The next morning, a luxury car pulled up to their front door to take his family to a towering skyscraper. In the car, Juhyok's mother was still in a daze, asking over and over again if her son had really awakened. Gwanjin smiled and confirmed it, adding a sentence that made the whole family nearly faint. Juhyok is currently a priceless national asset. His father and younger brother heard the phrase elite player and felt like they were dreaming. Gwanjin led them to the top floor, stopping in front of a magnificent apartment. Juhyok took out a powerful-looking black card and lightly swiped it through the sensor. A beep sounded as the door opened, revealing the lavish interior of the new home for his family.